I picked up the headset before the first call even hit. The hum of the fluorescent lights above me made the room feel smaller than it actually was. Rain tapped against the window in short, restless bursts, like someone drumming their fingers against a tombstone. My fingers hovered over the console, reflexively checking the line. Nothing, just the usual dead air. I always hated the first hour of the night shift. The quiet before the storm, when the air smells sharper, colder, heavier, like the world is holding its breath. The phone blinked red. Line 2. I clicked it. 911, what's your emergency? I asked, voice steady, practice. Nothing. A faint crackle, like the radio was trying to speak, but couldn't. I frowned, leaned closer, imagining interference. Then a sound broke through the static. A low, almost imperceptible hum. It was inside the line, inside the silence, but not coming from me. A voice, or something pretending to be one. I adjusted the mic, leaned back, tried to ground myself. My own heartbeat seemed unnervingly loud in the empty room. I cleared my throat. Hello? Can you hear me? Only static answered. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, like someone whispering just out of reach. A rhythm to it, in and out, almost like breathing. I felt my stomach tighten. My mind tried to reason. Bad connection, prank. Someone learning the system. But there was something in that sound that froze me, something patient, waiting. I tried again. Sir? Ma'am? Are you there? Then, for a single heartbeat, I thought I heard a word. Just one, soft and crooked. Help. My pulse jumped. I leaned in, straining to hear. And then it was gone. Just a static, cold and endless, like a white fog spilling across the room. I tapped the speaker, cursed under my breath. My desk clock ticked too loud. Outside, the rain had slowed, but the street lamps threw long, wet shadows across the lot. I could see my own reflection in the dark glass. Slightly blurry, slightly off, but that could be me just staring too long. And then it happened, a laugh, high-pitched, jagged, not human, not like a person at all, but like glass scraping over metal. It faded before I could process it. My hand froze over the console. What the hell is this? I called out again. 911, what's your emergency? My voice cracked. The line remained stubbornly silent, except for the static that now felt heavier, almost suffocating, wrapping around my ears like smoke. I rubbed my temples. My training told me to stay calm, methodical, log everything, stay professional. But the hairs on the back of my neck refused to lie down. I noticed a subtle shift in the air, as though the room itself was breathing with me or against me. Then the voice returned, clearer, closer, but still fractured. I see you. I froze. What? My chest tightened. No one could see me. This is a phone line, a dispatcher's room on the second floor. The cameras were dead for maintenance tonight. Only me, only the rain and my own echoing thoughts. I see you. It repeated, slower this time, and there was something almost gleeful about it, the kind of sound a child makes when they know a secret no one else does. I leaned away instinctively. My chair squeaked against the tile. The line buzzed with interference, then quiet again. I stared at the console, willing the phone to ring normally, anything normal, but nothing came. Just a soft drip of rain outside, the occasional car swishing past in puddles, and that nagging feeling in my chest that someone or something was watching. I tried to reason with myself. It's a prank. Someone on the other end, messing with the new guy. But deep down, I knew I wasn't the new guy. I'd been here long enough to know the rhythms of the night. The calls that never come. The ones that always do. This was different. I leaned back in the chair, tried to focus on the mundane. Lights above me flickered, just for a second, then steady. The static on the line seemed louder somehow. I realized I was holding my breath. I let it out slowly. A flicker of movement in the glass behind me caught my eye. I whipped around. Empty room. Just my chair, my desk, the stack of files I'd never get through tonight. But the reflection lingered a moment longer than it should have. A shadow moved with me, but there was no one there. I shook my head, forced myself to focus. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe my brain was just fraying from the hours, the isolation. Maybe the rain, the fluorescent hum. The endless night was playing tricks. But then I heard it again. A soft, deliberate whisper through the static. Not alone. My hand trembled. I tapped the mute button, then unmuted. Silence. My chest heaved. I looked at the headset. My reflection seemed to grin back at me. A little too slow, a little too sharp. My stomach turned. I leaned forward and scribbled a note in my log. Caller on line 2. Static. Whispering. Cannot locate. I stared at my own handwriting. The letters seemed wrong somehow, jagged at the edges, like they weren't entirely mine. Another sound, now unmistakable. Footsteps. Bare, slow, deliberate against the tile floor behind me. I froze. There should be no one. No one else was scheduled. I didn't even hear anyone enter. The office was locked. The building empty. My mouth went dry. I wanted to turn, wanted to see, but my body refused. The static hissed again, closer now. Sharper, like it was sneaking into my skull. I felt a tug at the back of my mind. Subtle, insistent. Look. I looked down at the console. The line number blinked. Line 2. My finger hovered, trembling. The hum in the headset had become a pulse, a heartbeat not my own. I swallowed, trying to focus on the rational. Maybe it's interference. Maybe the storm. Maybe I'm losing it. Then the voice again, soft, almost friendly this time. Come closer. I flinched, recoiled, my chair scraping the floor. But something in me, a mix of curiosity and that foolish streak that's kept me awake nights before, made me lean in. Nothing, just the static. I leaned back, heart hammering, and that's when I noticed it. A wet footprint on the tile. Bare, small, almost childlike. Dripping, leading from the window across the floor toward the console. I swear I could feel the wetness in the air, cold against my skin. I blinked. Nothing. Just the floor, perfectly clean, dry. The heartbeat in my headset slowed. The room felt empty. I rubbed my eyes, tried to laugh, but it sounded hollow even to me. I told myself to log off, to step out, to breathe. I clicked my pen nervously. The rain outside had stopped. Silence swallowed the office. And then, the softest click, the line 2 light went out. No static. No whispers. Nothing. I sat back, chest heaving, wondering if I had imagined it all. Maybe it was a trick of the storm, the fluorescent lights, my own frayed nerves. Maybe someone had been playing a sick joke. Then the phone blinked red again. Line 2. I froze. My heartbeat sped. My hands hovered. The static returned. Slow, deliberate, and somewhere beneath it, I thought I heard the faintest giggle. I wasn't alone, and I knew, somehow, that it wasn't going to let me be. The line never stayed quiet for long. I thought the first night would settle into the usual rhythm. The occasional drunk call, a barking neighbor, the siren of a car crashed somewhere down the county line. Instead, it started whispering. At first, it was just a faint hum, like electricity in a distant storm, barely noticeable over the rain hitting the windows. I leaned forward, rested my chin on my palm, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Then the hum twisted into murmurs. Words stretched thin over static, fragmented. I froze. One of the voices, it was familiar. My partner from last week's shift, calling a routine false alarm, laughing about spilled coffee and the county's endless potholes. Only this time, the voice wasn't in the room. It was in the line, distorted, echoing across the wires. Are you there? The voice whispered. I blinked, my heart twisting. It wasn't him. He'd left the station hours ago. I had checked. I remembered the walkout, the rain dripping off his jacket, the dull smell of wet asphalt following him. That memory was sharp. This voice, this mimicry, was wrong. Too wrong. I rubbed my eyes. Static flickered like candlelight, uneven, hesitant. I leaned back, trying to ground myself. Maybe my mind was fraying. Night shifts always did this to rookies, to old-timers alike. You start imagining shapes in the corner of your eye, voices and the hum of fluorescent lights. But this felt different. A new voice, cutting through the static. My mother's, soft, familiar, trembling. Are you safe? I jolted upright, gripping the headset. My mother had been hundreds of miles away for years, dead to the night and distance. Her voice, though, here in this office, through this line, was undeniably hers, and yet wrong. It carried a static edge, a rasp that didn't belong in any memory I had of her. My pulse sped. My throat went dry. I swallowed. Who was this? Who's on the line? My voice sounded small, almost afraid. Even to me, silence. Then the low hum returned, pulsating. And beneath it, a whisper of a laugh. Not warm, not human, but teasing, playful, like someone enjoying the fear they'd sown. I tried the usual, logging it, checking systems, running the channels. Nothing. All lines were normal, except line 2. Line 2 had life, a creeping, subtle life. Every time I thought it would end, it warped, shifted, changed voices. Now it was my own, my voice mocking me, saying things I hadn't spoken yet, in tones I hadn't used. I pulled back, chair scraping against the tile. The office lights flickered again. I blinked, looking around. Everything seemed unchanged, perfectly normal. Yet my chest felt tight, and the hair on my arms refused to lie down. There was an awareness here. Something alive, patient, waiting, watching. Then a new twist. The line carried another whisper, familiar but impossible. My own father, calling from years before. Calling me by a nickname no one else used, a memory buried deep and personal. He didn't say anything else, just call my name, stretching it out, low and deliberate. I felt my throat close. How could it know? How could the line reach into my past? I gripped the headset tighter. Rationality fought panic. Equipment interference, cross lines, prank calls, all the reasons I told myself as my stomach churned. But rationality didn't explain the smell, like wet dirt and burning paper, filling the office for a heartbeat, and my reflection in the glass. Not quite right. Slightly too still, slightly too slow to follow my movements. I glanced at the monitors. Every camera feed was normal. The office was empty, locked, silent, and yet the voices, the whispers, they were here, all around me, bending the air, bending the reality of the small, fluorescent-lit space. I tried to focus on one voice at a time, tracking it. The line became a maze. A voice of a friend from the first night shift, a neighbor's dog barking, even the dispatcher I replaced years ago. Each voice layered, overlapping, whispering fragments of memory and threat. I could almost follow them, almost reach out to the headset and touch something real. But each time I thought I did, the voices shifted again, mocking my attempt to understand. Then I noticed it, a pattern. Every voice, no matter whose, whispered a question. Are you alone? I laughed nervously because I could see the absurdity. Alone? I was alone. This was just a line, an office, rain, and yet my gaze caught something in the corner of the room. Movement, slow, deliberate, but not on any camera. Something small, crouched in shadow, shifting just enough that I could sense it, but not see it clearly. My chest tightened. My hand shook. The line flickered again. Voices overlapping now. My father, my mother, old partners, friends I hadn't seen in years. All whispering, all asking the same question. Are you alone? I whispered back, half defensive, half frightened. I'm here. My words sounded ridiculous, swallowed by the hum and static. But I couldn't stop myself. Something shifted. The shadow in the corner moved closer, faster this time, fluid, impossible. I blinked and it was gone. Just the ordinary office. The chairs, the monitors, the faint hum of fluorescent lights. My breath was shallow, my pulse thundering, the static pulse like a heartbeat, in sync with mine. Then a single word, not a whisper this time, clear and deliberate. Look. I hesitated, staring at the monitors, at the window, at the empty hallway beyond. I didn't want to look. My instinct screamed, but my curiosity, my foolish, human curiosity, pushed me forward. And that's when I realized the voices weren't just mimicking me, weren't just haunting me. They were telling me something. A warning, maybe a lure, and I didn't know which. I tried to trace the line again, to see if it came from the storm, from somewhere in the building, but every effort failed. The line was infinite, endless, bending space in ways my rational mind couldn't follow. It didn't exist in any map or log I had. It existed in the room, inside my ears, inside my skull, as if the world itself had folded and left me trapped in a loop of memory, voice, and static. Then, an almost imperceptible shift. The voices began to blend, harmonize, layering together. My father, my mother, my old partners, strangers, even my own voice, all merging into one long, trembling sentence. You shouldn't be here. Not alone. Not now. And I realized the implication. I wasn't alone. The room wasn't empty. Something was here with me. Something patient. Something that could imitate life, imitate memory, imitate me. And worse, it was learning, waiting, watching. Every choice I made, every breath, every word. I stumbled back, chair scraping the floor, heartbeat hammering. The rain outside had stopped entirely. Silence. A calm, deliberate calm that felt heavier than the worst storm. I could hear my own breathing, ragged, shallow. Then the line clicked. Line 2 went silent. For a moment, I thought it was over. Relief flickered briefly, and I laughed weakly, trying to shake off the cold grip in my chest. Maybe it had been a prank. Maybe my nerves had finally broken. But then, the faintest, slowest whisper, not through the line, through the air, directly into my ear. Are you alone? And I realized it wasn't on the phone anymore. It was everywhere. The first thing I noticed was the timestamp. Line 2 lit up again, the same hum of static. But what caught me off guard wasn't the call. It was the date and time. The console blinked. 3:17 a.m. I glanced at the wall clock. 3:17 a.m. exactly. My chest tightened. Nothing unusual about the time itself, but the precision, the way it lined up with the blinking light, made my stomach knot. Then the voice came. Clear this time, urgent. Someone's at the gate. My head snapped toward the monitors. The station's front gate? I was alone. The night guard had left hours ago. I double-checked the feeds. Empty. Nothing. Just shadows stretching across the asphalt and the streetlights outside. And yet, the voice was insistent, almost impatient. Someone's at the gate, it repeated. My throat went dry. I could feel the hairs on my neck, standing on end. I grabbed the headset, pressed the button to respond. Line 2, who is this? I don't see anyone. The line went silent. Then a sound that made me freeze. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate, crunching on gravel. My pulse jumped. I glanced at the monitors again. Nothing. The gate was empty, but the sound was unmistakable. Someone or something was moving. Close. Close enough that I could almost smell the damp earth. I leaned back, trying to tell myself it was a recording, a trick of the storm, a phantom of my own imagination. But the fear was real, deep and consuming. My fingers trembled as I adjusted the headset. Then the call repeated itself. Same words, same tone. Someone's at the gate. I froze. My hand hovered over the console. I had just heard that, just experienced it. I looked at the log. The timestamp matched perfectly with the previous entry. Not just similar, identical. It clicked in my brain then, slow and terrible. The call wasn't following a normal flow of time. It was repeating. Exactly. Like I was stuck in a loop, hearing events before they happened, or worse, events that might never happen at all. The room felt smaller. The fluorescent lights buzzed unevenly. I could hear my own heartbeat, too loud, echoing in my ears. My reflection in the glass seemed to hesitate, like it was lagging behind me. I shook my head, tried to clear it. I grabbed a pen, scribbling frantic notes. Line 2 repeating. Events identical, possibly predictive. My handwriting was shaky, barely legible. I could hear static thrumming through the headset, like a second heartbeat, matching my own fear. The line clicked again. This time, a child's voice, soft, urgent. She's in the hallway. I froze. My blood ran cold. The building was empty. I was the only one here. But the voice was precise, insistent. I imagined the long corridor behind me, lined with tiles that gleamed under the harsh light. Empty, quiet, safe, or so I thought. I forced myself to rise, to move toward the hallway. My legs shook. Every step felt like wading through thick water. The air smelled damp, metallic, like wet concrete and something I couldn't name. Each step I took, the voice followed, whispering, guiding, teasing. Not there. Closer, look behind you. I spun around. Nothing. Just the wall, the filing cabinets, the faint reflections of light. But the sense of being watched was suffocating. It pressed on my chest, on my mind, on the very edges of my perception. I reached the end of the hall. Still empty. Still quiet. I leaned against the wall, breathing shallow, trying to calm myself. And then the call repeated. She's in the hallway. I dropped the pen. My pulse jumped. The line was repeating again. Every word, every intonation, every slight pause. It wasn't a memory. It wasn't a prediction. It was a loop, and I was trapped inside it. I tried to break the pattern. I slammed my hand on the console, muting the line, unplugging the headset. Silence. Relief, sharp and fleeting. I exhaled slowly. The room seemed normal again, but the comfort was shallow, temporary. The tension in my chest didn't ease. The loop, it was waiting. Another call. Line 2. Same hum. Same static. She's in the hallway. I backed away, chair rolling under me. My reflection in the glass wavered, almost alive. It smiled when I didn't. Something wasn't right. Something wasn't human. The loop wasn't just in the calls. It was in the room, in the air, in me. I tried to rationalize. I told myself it was the stress, the isolation, the long night. But the fear, it wasn't rational. It clawed at me, slow, patient, relentless. My own heartbeat matched the static. My own breaths echoed in the empty office. And still, the line repeated itself, mocking me. I turned off the monitors, shut the office lights, hoping darkness would reset reality, hoping the loop would break. But it didn't. The rain outside had stopped completely, leaving only the smell of wet earth and decay. The silence pressed against my ears. Then another voice, deep, unfamiliar, smooth, commanding. You cannot leave. I froze. My fingers gripped the desk. My mouth went dry. My mind raced. I had been here before, hadn't I? In this room, at this hour, hearing these calls, these voices? Or was this my first time? Time felt wrong. Bent, folding back on itself like paper. I staggered to the window, looking out at the empty lot. Nothing. No one. Just a faint streetlight, flickering over the asphalt. And yet, the sense of eyes, watching, waiting, following. I shivered, pressing my hands to the glass. My reflection stared back. Not quite right. Too still, too knowing. The line clicked again. Line 2. She's in the hallway. And this time, the voice added something new. You know what's coming. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. The loop wasn't just repeating events. It was teaching me, warning me, preparing me for something I couldn't yet understand. My mind reeled. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My voice sounded alien. Even to me, I stumbled backward, chair rolling, knocking over a cup, water spilled, dark on the tile. The monitors flickered back on. One showed the front gate, empty. Another, the hallway, empty. And yet, the fear was palpable, tangible, pressing against my skin. I leaned over the console, trying to trace the call, trying to find some rational explanation. Interference, prank, malfunction, something, anything. But the line was perfect, precise, infinite, and the static, oh, the static, was alive, pulsing, responding to my fear. She's in the hallway. Each repetition hammered deeper into me. Each loop sharpened the edges of the terror. Each time, I understood a little more, yet knew nothing at all. The room wasn't just a room anymore. It was a trap, a snare. The calls weren't just calls. They were the walls closing in, the air tightening around me. I fell into the chair, head in my hands. The monitors glared at me, reflecting a distorted version of reality I couldn't trust. And the line continued, repeating, endless, mocking, patient, teaching. waiting. A memory, or was it a prediction? Flashed in my mind. I'd heard it before. Maybe last night. Maybe years ago. Maybe tomorrow. You cannot leave. The words reverberated in my skull. The loop wasn't just repeating events. It was breaking me, rewiring me, folding me into its rhythm. I closed my eyes, trying to will the voices away. Tried to convince myself it was a glitch, a trick of the mind. But when I opened them again, the reflection in the glass moved independently. Smiling, waiting. Another click. Line 2. She's in the hallway. And for the first time, I realized I was not the dispatcher anymore. I was the subject. The voice had chosen me. The loop had claimed me. I slumped in my chair, heart hammering. The static pulsed like a second heartbeat, syncing with my fear. My own voice, or what sounded like it, whispered from the line. You are here. Forever. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Time didn't exist. The office, the monitors, the line, they were infinite, endless. And I was trapped in it. The rain had returned outside, soft, tapping on the window like a lullaby. But it wasn't comforting. It was a warning. A reminder that the world outside didn't exist. Only the loop, only the line, only the hallway, and the knowledge that whatever was coming was already here. The call came in without warning, like a shadow slipping through the static of the night. Line 4 lit up, and my headset crackled to life. Dispatch, this is Unit 12-9er, the voice said, calm. Too calm, like it didn't belong to someone about to report problem. I frowned at the console, squinting at the screen. Unit 12-9er wasn't responding to any active calls. Their location showed stationary near the industrial park. Headlights off, engine running, or so the sensor suggested. The area should have been quiet, empty, just warehouses and cracked asphalt beneath a halo of streetlights. Unit 12-9er, do you copy? I pressed the mic. Silence. A faint hum of static. Then the voice again. Same calm tone. I'm here. Everything is fine. Just checking the lot. I exhaled slowly. A tension I hadn't realized was coiled in my chest tightening. Something was off. Too precise. Too peaceful. The calmness wasn't reassuring. It was wrong. Wrong in a way that makes your skin prickle, like a room too quiet before a storm. I keyed the scanner, listening in to other nearby units. Normal chatter, routine checks, the dull hum of the night shift moving along. But this voice, 12-9er, was separate. Separate from the flow of time, from the ordinary rhythm of officers patrolling empty streets. Dispatch! I've got the lot clear. The voice continued casual, almost bored. No one's here. Just me. All quiet. No trouble. My hand hovered over the console. I knew the lot wasn't clear. Cameras showed the shadows of abandoned cars, broken fencing, and the faint outlines of buildings that had been empty for years. And yet, the voice, it sounded like the officer was walking calmly through it, almost enjoying the solitude. Unit 12-9er, I said, try and keep my tone neutral. You're showing as part. You're not moving. Everything is fine. The voice interrupted, perfectly serene. You don't need to worry. Just doing a sweep. I stared at the monitor. The car wasn't moving. But the voice, the way it spoke, it suggested motion, purpose, a patrolling officer scanning the lot as if walking among the shadows. A chill ran down my spine. I leaned closer, trying to reconcile the image on the screen with the voice in my ear. The patrol car silent, motionless, engine barely humming. Shouldn't produce that tone. Shouldn't have a sense of someone physically there. And then the line went quiet. At first, I thought it was normal. Static-filled pauses happened all the time. But this wasn't normal. There was a presence in the silence. Not just empty air, but something waiting in the calm between words. The kind of quiet that presses against your skull. Heavy, intimate. I tapped the mic again. Unit 12-9er, do you read? Respond. The reply came immediately. Calm. Even. Too calm. I'm here. Everything is fine. Just checking the lot. The words repeated, like an echo trapped in a hollow room. Same tone, same inflection, same rhythm. My stomach turned. The voice was normal, hyper-normal. But normal had become unnatural. I keyed the camera feed again. Nothing moved. No lights. No shadows beyond what I already saw. No hint of life. The car sat in the lot, engine idling, silent. And yet, the voice sounded alive, perfectly lucid, scanning an empty world as if it were occupied. A small detail flickered on the monitor, a movement behind the lot's fence. Faint, too quick to identify. I squinted. A reflection? A stray animal? Something else? My chest tightened as I zoomed in, but the feed froze for a moment, pixelating just enough to hide whatever it was. I frowned, gripping the console. The calm voice in my ear continued, uninterrupted. Everything is fine. Just me. No trouble. The contrast made my skin crawl. My rational mind screamed for an explanation, for a logical reason. Technical glitch. Playback error. A prank. Anything that would allow me to leave the lot and the voice behind. But deep down, I knew there was no normal answer. Not for that tone. Not for that presence. I tried contacting other units. Any officers near the industrial park? I've got a stationary car reporting in. Tone unusual. Static. Then a distant reply. Nothing here. All clear. I pressed back to line 4. Unit 12-9er, do you copy? I need a status update. Please respond. The voice returned. Calm. Precise. I'm here. Everything is fine. Just checking the lot. I exhaled shakily, feeling a tremor in my hands. I'd already heard those words several times. Not minutes ago, but seconds ago. The repetition made my stomach churn. The voice wasn't just calm. It was unchanging, unflinching. A machine mimicking humanity. A noise outside drew my attention. A soft scrape, almost imperceptible from the direction of the lot. I froze, listening. Nothing moved on the feed. No lights, no shadows. But the sound was there. Metal on concrete, deliberate. Slow. Too deliberate. My pulse spiked. The calm voice interrupted my thoughts, as if reading my tension. Nothing to worry about. Just checking the lot. Everything is fine. I gritted my teeth. The words, repeated again and again, were a mantra now, echoing in my head, overlaying the creaks and groans of the old building. I wanted to respond, to assert control, but the voice, too steady, too confident, held the room, held my mind. Another movement on the monitor, a flicker in the shadows near a dumpster. Something shifted, but too quickly, too smoothly to be human. I blinked. The feed adjusted itself. Nothing there, just a lot. Empty, silent, waiting. I pressed the mic again, voice tight. Unit 12-9er, identify yourself. Are you alone? The answer came, fluid, calm, and impossible. I am here. Everything is fine. Just checking the lot. No one around. Nothing to see. The words were the same, but the meaning twisted with every repetition. Each cycle, each echo, the voice seemed more detached, more separate from human concern. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was listening to something else. Something occupying the officer's body, the car, the night. I glanced at the clock. Minutes had passed. Hours, maybe. Time felt wrong. Elastic, stretching, and snapping back like a rubber band. The voice kept speaking. Perfectly even, unaffected by the static, the empty lot. The rain beginning to patter against the pavement outside. Then it paused. Not a full silence, just a hesitation. A barely perceptible shift in tone. Enough to make my stomach tighten. I leaned closer, breath shallow. Unit 12-9er? A whisper soft, almost lost in the hum of the headset. Do you see them? I jumped. The voice. Not calm anymore. Not neutral. Charged. Tense. But still human. Still familiar. A subtle shift I couldn't place. And then, as quickly as it changed, it reverted. Calm, clinical, reassuring. Everything is fine. Just checking a lot. My hand shook. I gripped the console, trying to steady my mind, to ground myself in reality. But reality had become slippery. The car, the lot, the calm officer tone. They weren't separate anymore. They were entwined. A single entity, alive in its quiet way. Watching. Waiting. Another flicker on the monitor. A figure, just barely visible, standing near the back gate. I leaned forward. The rain blurred the image, stretching the shadows, but was there, standing, motionless, silent, watching. I swallowed hard. The voice returned, calm as ever. Everything is fine, just checking the lot. And for the first time, I realized that the words weren't for me. They weren't reassurance. They were a warning. The calmness wasn't safety. It was control, and the night had just begun. The feed flickered before I even realized it. 1 second. The lot was empty. Gray asphalt under the soft drizzle. The next, shadows shifted, subtle enough that I almost blamed the reflection of my own monitor. But then I saw it again, a dark figure, standing at the edge of the streetlights, just beyond where the cameras could focus. Always at the periphery, always just out of reach. I leaned closer, squinting at the screen, my pulse quickening. The rain blurred the lens, smeared light across the asphalt, but the shape stayed sharp, unnatural in contrast. It didn't move the way people do. It didn't breathe the way people do. Yet every time the camera flicked, it was still there, in a slightly different spot, shifting, watching. I tried telling myself it was a glitch, a stray reflection in the wet surface. My brain reached for logic, for reason. Street cameras were old, the wiring frayed in spots. Static could create patterns that tricked your eyes. And yet, my gut tightened, a cold coil of warning curling in my stomach. I'd seen too many nights alone in this building to ignore that feeling. Unit 12-9er? I said aloud, almost whispering. No response, only the static hum of monitors. The figure remained, always just out of reach. Not close enough to identify, not distant enough to dismiss. It was tethered to the feed, tethered to the lot, tethered to me. I felt it in the back of my neck, in the small hairs standing on end, in the sweat collecting along my hairline. The static in my headset grew louder, a low, almost imperceptible undertone beneath the hum of the night. I rotated the camera to follow the figure, and each time it seemed to anticipate the movement. A shift left, and the shape had already moved right. Still at the edge, still elusive. It wasn't human. It couldn't be human. And yet, the sense of awareness, the deliberate positioning, it was intelligent, calculated. I pressed the console buttons harder than I intended. A sharp clack that echoed through the empty dispatch room. My throat went dry. I tried to call another unit for confirmation, for backup, for sanity. Nothing. Line silent. Voices distant, blurred, as if I were underwater. My fingers trembled over the keys. Then, the figure moved closer. Not directly toward the camera. Not directly toward the lot. Just closer in presence. Closer in weight. In the way it occupied the space I thought was empty. I noticed small details. Impossible details. A tilt of the head. A slight shift of shadow that suggested posture, that suggested patience. Waiting. I blinked rapidly, trying to reset my eyes. Maybe exhaustion had started to twist my perception. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was a monotony of the night. The hours of monitoring empty streets. The endless hum of fluorescent lights. And yet, the figure persisted. I adjusted the feed, increasing contrast. My stomach dropped. Its eyes, or what I thought were eyes, glimmered faintly in the wet sheen of the asphalt. Not bright, not glowing, but perceptible, watching. A tiny pinpoint of awareness that felt like it pierced straight through the camera feed and into me. My hand shook as I hit the microphone button. Unit 12-9er, report. Do you see anyone near the lot? Silence. The figure shifted imperceptibly, but enough for me to notice. A subtle step, a shadow stretching across a puddle, and then a whisper in my headset. Just a whisper, barely audible. Do you see me? I jerked back, heart pounding. The voice wasn't on the radio. It wasn't coming from any known line. It was close, too intimate. The whisper blended with the static, curling through my skull like smoke. I pressed the mic again, stammering. Unit 12-9er, do you copy? I need confirmation. Nothing. Only the faint rhythm of rain on the window. Only the quiet shuffle of my own desk chair squeaking against the floor. Only the figure, still at the edge, just beyond clear view. I realized I couldn't tear my eyes away. Even the thought of moving made my stomach twist. Something had me fixed in place. Not fear in the sense of panic, but fear as tether, an invisible hand holding me there, forcing me to watch. The lights above the lot flickered, briefly plunging the cameras into darkness, then snapping back to life. And each time, the figure shifted closer in my perception, though never stepping fully into the frame, like it knew the boundaries of the feed, like it respected them or mocked them. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe if I stopped watching, it would disappear. Maybe ignoring it would make it go away. But instinct, primal and unshakable, kept me locked on the screen. The static, the flicker, the whisper, I couldn't let it go. Another flicker, another shift. I noticed a detail I hadn't before. A hand, thin, pale, almost featureless, pressed lightly against a chain-link fence at the back of the lot. It lingered just long enough for me to see, then retreated into shadow. My stomach churned. A human hand couldn't move like that, flex like that, remain perfectly still without trembling. And yet it did. The whisper came again, now more distinct, not through the radio, not through the microphone, but in my skull, threaded through my thoughts. Do you see me? I bolted upright, chair clattering. Who is this? I muttered aloud, though the room was empty. Only my reflection stared back from the darkened monitor. Only the shadow of the figure lingering at the edge of the feed. The streetlights outside the lot flickered in rhythm with my heartbeat. Rain splashed against the cracked asphalt. Tiny rivers tracing the imperfections in pavement. And every flicker revealed the figure closer, always just beyond the boundary of clarity, always teasing the edge of perception. I tried to call again. All units, confirm lot status. Theirs. Static swallowed my voice. A sharp, harsh burst, the kind that makes your ears ache, then silence. Only the faint whisper, do you see me? I realized something else. Each time the lights flickered, each time the camera feed skipped, the figure didn't just shift. It waited, calculated. It anticipated my gaze, my reactions, my fear. The lot was its stage. I was its audience. A sudden surge of adrenaline forced me to lean closer, zooming the camera. The figure receded slightly, but a hand remained visible on the fence, pale and delicate. My stomach dropped. Something about it was impossibly wrong. Too still, too precise, too aware. Minutes or hours, I couldn't tell anymore, passed. The rain grew heavier. The lights continued to flicker. My headset buzzed. Faint whispers threading through static, and the figure lingered, just outside my grasp, outside my understanding, outside the line between reality and something else entirely. I leaned back in the chair, wiping sweat from my brow. Rationality demanded I call someone, anyone, but fear, a creeping, insidious kind, rooted me in place, watching, waiting, hoping, dreading, and then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished. Not a blur, not a fade, gone. Silence settled over the lot. The cameras reflected only empty asphalt, the scattered puddles, and occasional shimmer of rain. I exhaled, shivering. Relief, brief and fragile, washed over me. Perhaps it had been a trick of the light. Perhaps fatigue had finally caught up to me. But the whisper remained, threaded through my thoughts, impossible to ignore. Do you see me? And I knew, with a certainty that made my blood run cold, that I hadn't. Not fully. Not yet. The line clicked alive before I even touched the headset. Static. Light at first, like rain hitting the window pane. I squinted at the screen. No record of a call yet. But the voice came, soft, trembling, carried under the hum of the night. I think someone's out there. I froze, not with fear exactly, but with that tight coil of awareness that tells you something is off. Outside, rain drummed against the asphalt in a steady rhythm, each drop a tiny hammer against my nerves. I could feel it pressing to the walls of the dispatch room, pressing into my chest. Where exactly? I asked, keeping my tone calm, professional. The voice was young, maybe mid-20s, shaky and quiet. By the park, the streetlight It's just standing there, the caller said, breath caught in the static, ragged. Watching me, I don't know what to do. I flipped the camera feed to that area. Streetlights flickered, orange halos caught in the drizzle, the shadows long and dark. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, and yet the sense of presence was undeniable. My skin prickled, that same instinctual dread I felt before. The lot, the figure at the edge of cameras, was here, in my bones, in my ears, whispering through the headset. "Are you alone?" I asked, keeping my eyes glued to the screen. "Yes," the voice whispered. Then a pause, a shiver of static. "I think it's looking at me." I swallowed. "Can you see it clearly?" "No, it's just there. Shadows. But I feel it. Watching." The line went quiet for a heartbeat, and I felt it too. The sudden pressure, the sense of someone just beyond my peripheral vision. The overhead lights flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement in the corner of the room. My pulse spiked. The room was empty. I was alone. And yet, I spoke slowly, deliberately, try and keep my voice steady. "Keep calm. Try not to move too much. Can you see any features?" There was a soft rasping in the rain, mingling with the static. The voice came again, barely audible. "No, I can't see. Just eyes, watching me." My stomach tightened. The word eyes made it more real, more present than anything else could. It wasn't just a shadow. It wasn't a trick of light. There was something there, something aware, something that could watch. I rotated the street camera slightly, zooming in, wet asphalt, flickering lights, empty streets. I leaned closer, gripping the edge of the console, and then I saw it, not fully, not clearly, but a shape, a dark shape between the puddles and the shadows, shifting slightly, always just out of focus, always teasing the edge of perception. The voice quivered. "It's moving closer. I think it knows I can see it." I nodded, though it couldn't see me. Nodded at the screen, at the figure, at the impossible awareness that seemed to mirror the caller's terror. My throat went dry. "Stay on the line. I'm watching." Static cracked sharply, and for a moment I thought I heard laughter. Not human, not right. A hollow, shifting sound threaded through the rain, curling around the edges of my mind. I pressed the mic, tried to reassure the caller. "You're safe. Keep moving slowly. Stay into the light if you can." The voice shook. "It's following the light. It doesn't touch the shadows. But it moves with me. It's just there." I felt it too. Not through the cameras, not through the monitors, but in the low hum of the building, in the drop of each raindrop against the glass, in the weight of my own chest. Something had entered the space, unseen but undeniably present. My pulse hammered in my ears. I adjusted the camera feed again, but the figure was gone, just a blur of wet asphalt, reflections of streetlights, shadows stretching in impossible ways. And yet, I knew it hadn't left. It never left. It just waited patient for me to lower my guard, for the caller to stop looking, to stop fearing. Another flicker of static, and the voice whispered again, "It's right behind me. I can feel it breathing." I froze, my own breath caught in my throat. I wanted to tell the caller it was fine, that I could see them, that nothing was there, but my voice stuck. My fingers hovered over the console, trembling, watching the screen, watching the shadows, watching the spaces between the spaces. A distant car passed, its headlights washing the street in bright, harsh white. For a brief second, the figure's outline emerged, standing perfectly still. I saw the tilt of the head, the unnatural stillness, the awareness of eyes that didn't belong to a human face. And then the car moved past. The shadows swallowed it again. Gone, but not gone. Always there, always aware, always watching. The caller's voice broke the silence. I don't know how long I can keep this up. "Focus on breathing," I said, whispering now almost to myself. "Slow, controlled. Keep your eyes on the light. Keep moving." And then I heard it, not through the line, not even through the camera feed. A soft, deliberate footstep on wet asphalt. Only one. And I knew without seeing, without proof. The presence wasn't just behind the caller. It was here, somewhere in the building, somewhere in the hum of monitors, in the shadows along the ceiling tiles, in the flicker of the fluorescent lights above. I pressed my fingers into the desk, gripping, needing grounding. My chest heaved. Static hissed in my headset, and the voice, trembling, whispered one last time, "It's close." I could feel it now, not just see it. The sense of awareness, the tethering gaze, something that mirrored the caller's terror and amplified mine. The rain outside hammered against the window pane like tiny drum beats of warning. And through it all, I realized something impossible. The figure didn't just exist on the street. It existed in the space between perception and reality. Waiting, watching, learning. I tried to call for another unit. To bring someone else in, to break the tether. Nothing. No response. Only static, low and insistent. Crawling along the edges of consciousness. And then, as abruptly as it had made itself known, the figure vanished. Not like it walked away, but like it had been a gap in air itself. A hollow in reality. The street outside the park was empty again. The rain fell in unbroken rhythm. The light pools glimmered on asphalt, and the static quieted just a touch, but never completely. I exhaled shakily, pressing my forehead to the console. Relief, brief and fleeting, tried to settle in my chest, but the memory of awareness, the impossibility of eyes that watched without moving, refused to release its grip. The line crackled softly. The caller's voice came again, almost inaudible. "I think it's gone. I hope. I understood it perfectly. Because the thing out there, whatever it was, didn't obey rules, didn't follow logic. It waited. It learned. And if it could be so patient, so meticulous with one terrified civilian, what had it wanted from me? The night stretched on. The rain fell. The monitors flickered. Shadows lengthened. And in every corner of the building, every hum of every system, I could feel it. Waiting, watching, patient. And I knew, with a weight that pressed like a stone in my chest, that I hadn't seen it fully. Not yet. Not really. The voice in the rain had given me one truth. Some presences don't need to touch, don't need to reveal themselves completely. Awareness alone is enough to unmoor you, to tether you to fear, to make the ordinary impossible. And I was tethered. The call came in before the line even rang. Static, faint at first, like a sigh through the wires. I tapped the headset and leaned in, my stomach already knotted. "Hello," I said. No answer, just a hiss of static, rolling and uneven. I tilted my head, trying to locate the signal. Then a voice, soft, almost apologetic, cut through. I think I'm lost." The word hit differently than usual. Lost, not stranded, not stuck, not hurt, just lost. Like the world itself had refused to hold the caller. "Where are you?" I asked, eyes darting over the screen. The GPS overlay, the familiar grids of streets and roads, I had memorized like the back of my hand. There was a pause. Long, too long. I don't know, the voice whispered. "I thought I was on Miller's Road, but it's not here." I frowned at the screen, pulling up the maps. Miller's Road should have been a simple straight line, 2 miles from the outskirts of town. Nothing complicated. But the overlay blinked. Nothing. No road. Not even a suggestion of one. The land stretched out in wet black and green. Trees pressed close. The grid ended abruptly. "I'm looking," I said, voice steadier than I felt. "Can you describe anything? Signs, lights, intersections?" "Trees and a curve," the voice said, trembling. "I drove for miles. It should have opened up. But it just keeps going, and I keep driving, and I can't get out." Something in that tone, in the cadence of fear, tightened my chest. I had heard calls like this before, the disoriented drivers, lost in fog or rain. But this was different. There was no fog. There was no map error. There was impossibility. I flipped through every layer of satellite feed, every street camera in range. Nothing that matched the description. But the rain fell heavy across the screens, glinting off surfaces as if the night itself wanted to be seen, wanted to be real. "Listen to me," I said, Leaning forward, I don't see Miller's Road. Are you sure of the signs? The trees? Yes. The caller snapped, voice panicked. I passed the same tree, same bend again and again. I don't understand. And that's when it hit me. Not the words, not the voice, the pattern, the repetition. Something about the cadence, the timing, the way the call seemed to echo its own fear. The description wasn't just vague, it was looping, like time was bending over itself. Do you see any houses? Anything else? I asked, frantically scanning the monitors. No, nothing, just the road and the rain. And sometimes I think I see someone on the side just watching. I froze. My own pulse spiked. That low hum of dread crawling along my spine. Someone watching, not moving, but aware. That same awareness I felt before. The voice in rain. The shadow on the street. The figure that never fully appeared. Stay calm. I said more to myself than to the caller. Try to keep driving slowly. Can you see a light? Only the headlights. They reflect off the wet trees. And I swear I can see. Eyes. Watching. Static hissed over the line, and I leaned closer. Eyes. Always eyes. The figure didn't have to move. Awareness alone was enough. The thought clawed at the edge of my mind, unmooring it. I pulled up every camera in the vicinity. Nothing. Just empty roads. Puddles catching the orange glow of distant streetlights. And yet, I could feel it. Something beyond the feed, beyond logic. Patient. Waiting. Aware. I'm trying. I whispered, voice trembling slightly. I'll guide you. Keep your headlights steady. Keep going slowly. The voice was quiet, scared, almost breaking. I think I passed the same bend again. The same tree, the same curve. I can't escape it. The word escape made something shift in me. Not fear the caller, not even just dread, but creeping realization. This road didn't exist. Not in maps, not in grids, not anywhere a satellite could see. And yet it was real, real to the caller, real to me, through the pulse of their panic. I pulled up the GPS log from my own patrol unit. Everything outside this immediate call was standard, gridlock, accounted for. Every road verified, except this. Nothing, not even a trace. And yet, I could feel the pull of it. The line between what existed and what could exist blurred, and my heartbeat echoed in my ears. Keep driving. Don't stop, I said, trying to anchor both of us to something rational. We'll find a way out. Don't look for shortcuts. Just keep the road in front of you. I can't, the caller whispered, trembling. It's like it goes on forever. And I can see it just there, watching. My eyes flicked to the monitor again. Empty trees, flickering lights, no road, and yet I could feel the gaze, weightless but undeniable. Not a person, not a human presence. Something that existed in the in-between, waiting, measuring, knowing. Describe it, I said, voice low. What do you see? Shape dark, tall, still. Eyes glowing maybe, or reflecting. I don't know, just aware. Aware. The word burned itself into my consciousness. Not just seeing, not just lurking, but conscious of us, waiting for a misstep. And then silence fell. Not static, not the line cutting out. Just nothing. I leaned closer, breath shallow. Hello? No answer. Only the drip of rain against the building's exterior. Only the flicker of monitors reflecting empty streets. And then a soft, deliberate click. The line opened again. A whisper, almost apologetic. I don't know where I am. My fingers hovered over the console. I wanted to reach out, guide them, find them, but the road didn't exist. And I began to wonder in the back of my mind if the caller had ever been on it at all, or if something had drawn them there like I had been drawn before, to the edges of perception, to the spaces where awareness itself became terrifying. I see it. I see someone in the trees, the caller said. Their voice broke, trembling. I think it knows I see it. My pulse spiked. I scanned every camera feed. Nothing. Empty trees. Empty bends, but the sense of being watched pressed in. My chest tightened. Something had followed the caller. Something had breached the barrier between the map and the unknown. "Stay on the line," I said, voice steady though my hands shook. "We'll find you." Another pause, then a soft intake of breath, and the words came, I think it's closer. Right behind me. I can't." And then the line went dead. No static. No click. Just gone. I sat frozen, staring at the empty monitors, the unbroken grids of verified roads, the rain still falling. My stomach knotted. The realization sank in slowly, a leaden weight in my chest. The location didn't exist. The road didn't exist. And the caller might not exist anymore. I scrolled through the call logs. No record. Nothing in the system. The time was correct. The timestamp real. But the line had no origin. No connection. Like a ghost phone, calling from somewhere that didn't exist, bringing a presence I could feel pressing through the rain and screams, through logic itself. The rain outside fell harder. Each drop hammered against the window, like a metronome, counting down to something inevitable. I could still feel it, watching, waiting, knowing. The impossible had breached the ordinary, and I had only a momentary glimpse, a fraction of awareness, to understand the scale of it. And then, in the corner of my eye, a flicker, a shadow moving, not on the monitors, not on any feed, just in the room. I froze, my breath caught, the awareness, the same I'd felt in the street, in the rain, in other calls, pressed against me, silent, patient, unseen but undeniable. I realized something I didn't want to admit. It wasn't just a caller lost on a road that wasn't there. Something had followed. Something had learned. Something had taken the space between reality and impossibility and made it its own. And if it could breach that line once, what was stopping it from reaching me? I leaned back slowly, trying to ground myself. The monitors reflected empty streets, rain, shadows, nothing tangible. And yet, the line between what was real and what was possible had been shattered. The caller had disappeared into a road that didn't exist, into a space that refused maps, that refused understanding. I exhaled, the breath catching, heavy with fear and awe. The road that wasn't, the presence that watched, the impossible awareness. It all pressed like the rain itself, a weight I couldn't shake. And I knew, somewhere deep in my mind, that this wasn't over. That the absence of the caller was not the absence of the thing that had followed them. I stared at the monitors. The rain fell, shadows shifted, and somewhere in the impossibility of a road that never was, the presence waited. The line clicked, and I froze before even speaking. Heavy breathing filled the headset. Not hurried, not ragged, just steady, deep, deliberate, as though someone was testing the silence before stepping forward. I leaned closer, squinting at the console, fingers hovering over the buttons. 911, what's your emergency? I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Silence, just the breathing, the kind that crawls under your skin, settles into your chest, and makes it impossible to tell the sound is coming from outside or somewhere inside your own head. Hello? I tried again. My voice sounded thin, too loud in the small, dimly lit room. The monitors flickered, rain tapping softly against the windows. Outside, the night pressed in wet and black, but inside, it felt warmer somehow, heavier. The air seemed to thicken with every inhale I took. The breathing shifted, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A pause, then a deeper, slower intake. My heartbeat picked up. I leaned back in my chair and glanced at call info. No location, just a cell ping somewhere near the outskirts of town. Sir or ma'am, are you there? I asked. My voice cracked. The word there felt meaningless. I could feel something in the line, something present and patient, a faint chuckle, or maybe it was just the echo of my own nerves, slithered through the static. The breathing didn't stop. If anything, it grew more intimate, like it knew me, not my name, not my face, but the rhythm of my own life, the way I breathed when I thought no one was watching. I checked the caller ID again. No name, just an untraceable number. I tried calling back. Rang once, then the line went dead. Dead silence. I exhaled, trying to shake it off. Maybe a prank. Teenagers. Some glitch. That had to be it. But then it came back. The breathing. Closer this time. Heavier, more deliberate. My fingers tightened on the headset. I could feel a tingle on the back of my neck. The sensation of being watched. Not a glance from afar. A gaze pressed against the back of my skull. Unblinking, aware. I swallowed. Sir, ma'am, I need you to speak to me. Can you tell me your name? A pause. Then just a whisper, so soft I barely caught it. I know you. My stomach dropped. My heart jumped, knocking against my ribs like it wanted out. I leaned back, scanning the room, imagining someone had slipped past the locks, past cameras. My own office suddenly felt too small, too closed in. I don't know you, I said. My words sounded weak. Even to me, the breathing didn't stop. If anything, it shifted in cadence, like a mirror of my own heartbeat. Slow, then fast, then slow again. I could almost count the intervals, almost predict the rises and falls. And with every repetition, a creeping familiarity took root. This rhythm, it was mine. Somehow, I swallowed hard and tapped the headset, wanting to end it, if this is a joke. A click cut me off, and the line went silent, pure static. Then, slowly, the breathing returned. Not from the start, but in the middle, like it had been listening while I wasn't paying attention. I froze. The pattern was perfect. My own breathing, my own exhale. It was mimicking me, or maybe anticipating me. My chest tightened. Panic licked at the edges of my mind. I tried to remind myself, rational, prank, glitch, nothing real, but my fingers shook. My gaze darted to the monitors. Camera feeds of empty streets, patrol logs, the usual quiet night of unremarkable calls. Nothing unusual, nothing that could explain the familiarity in the breaths. Who is this? I whispered more to the air than the line. The response came slow, deliberate, chilling. Another breath, heavy, measured, familiar. My own. I stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. Every instinct screamed to run, to disconnect, to escape. But the line stayed open. The breathing continued. Not mocking, not threatening, just present, watching, waiting. I sat back down, hands gripping the headset. Why are you doing this? A pause, then a soft, slow laugh. Not loud, not harsh, but unmistakably human, impossibly close. My skin prickled, goosebumps raced across my arms. Something was inside my mind now, threading itself through the rhythm of my own heart, a subtle echo I couldn't ignore. I tried calling my supervisor. Shaking, phone rang, then went straight to voicemail. Another call came through on the 911 line. My fingers trembled as I answered. 911, what's your... Another whisper. I'm here. I froze, every nerve screaming. Not someone outside the line. Not a caller across town. This felt, here, in the room, a presence that shouldn't exist, threading itself into the ordinary hum of my night shift, bleeding into the air I breathed. I glanced around. Empty desks, monitors flickering, rain tapping the window, and yet I could feel it behind me. Patient, deliberate, a shadow pressing against the boundary of my awareness. I can't see you, I said, voice low, trembling. I don't know what you want. Breathing, heavy, in the same rhythm as mine. Faster now, closer, more insistent. Every inhale felt like it pressed into my chest. Pushing, probing. I could sense the edges of it, the outline of something, watching, learning, waiting. I leaned forward, pressing the headset against my ear. I'm just a dispatcher, I said, almost begging. I can't help if. The line clicked, then silence. Pure, suffocating silence. And then a voice, low, intimate, terrifyingly close. I've been here all along. I jerked the headset away. My pulse thundered in my ears. I stared at the monitors, at the rows of empty streets, the blinking lights, the rain. Nothing moved. Nothing should have been able to move. And yet, I knew it was there, waiting, patient, familiar. I could feel the rhythm of it. syncing with my own. I tried to tell myself it was fatigue, night shifts, isolation, nothing supernatural, but the air in the room seemed heavier, the rains tapping louder, shadows stretching longer than they should. Something alive pressed against the edges of perception. I exhaled slowly, trying to ground myself. The breathing returned, soft, deliberate, intimate. My own pattern mirrored and twisted, echoing back at me. I closed my eyes for a second, shaking my head. Opened them. The monitors reflected empty streets. My desk, the headset, safe, and yet I knew it was there, watching, sinking, waiting. I tried talking again. Who are you? What do you want? Another pause, then the whisper. I'm always here, with you. My stomach dropped. My hand shook on the desk. Every rational thought screamed at me. It couldn't be real. And yet, the rhythm, the familiarity of the breaths, pressed in on me like the rain outside pressed on the world. Heavy, inescapable, intimate. I shut my eyes, tried to breathe, tried to convince myself it was over. But the line stayed open. The breath stayed close. Mine mirrored, patient, waiting. And deep inside, I realized with a chill that the night was no longer mine. The presence wasn't just in the call. It was here, in the air I inhaled, in the rhythm of my heartbeat, in the shadows where the monitor's light didn't reach. And then, almost tenderly, the voice came again. Don't stop. Don't hide. You'll see me. I didn't move. I couldn't. Not really. The rain fell outside, soft and heavy. Shadows shifted. The room held its breath. And I felt in the hollow between pulses and breaths that this was just the beginning. The line clicked again before I could even reach for the headset. The same steady breathing. Slow, deliberate, heavy, too familiar. I froze, gripping the edge of the console, heart hammering. Not like last time. Not just a call. This was different. It wasn't random. It was me, my own rhythm. My own breaths reflected back through the line. Warped but unmistakable. I swallowed. 9/11, who is this? My voice trembled, thin in the hum of the night shift. The office lights flickered, briefly dimming. As if the building itself hesitated to answer. The breathing paused, then shifted. A pause. A slow, measured inhale. And then a whisper, low, intimate, unmistakable. You're awake. I flinched, not at the words. At the fact it sounded like someone inside my head, echoing thoughts I hadn't spoken. My pulse raced, each beat amplified in my ears. I forced my eyes back to the monitors. Empty streets, rain-slicked asphalt glistening under sodium lights. Patrol cars parked where they always were. Nothing moving. Nothing. Yet I could feel it. Watching. Patient. Waiting. I gripped the headset tighter. I don't understand. How do you? The breathing responded, mimicking me exactly now, syncing with my pulse. Slow, shallow, then deep, then pause. And every time it did, my stomach dropped a little further. It wasn't a prank, not a glitch, not something I could rationalize. I leaned back, pressing my palm to my forehead. The office felt smaller, tighter, the walls pressing in. Shadows pulled in corners I had walked past a dozen times without noticing. Now they seemed to twitch, to stretch, as though aware of me. I tried to focus on the call screen, the digital readouts flashing the usual pings. Nothing, just nothing. The pattern of breathing continued. Synced, deliberate, and then a voice, barely audible, softer than my own exhale. I know when you breathe. I froze mid-inhale. My hand tightened on the desk. The words weren't just sent down the line. They were inside the spaces between my thoughts, threading through the edges of my perception. I could feel it in my chest, in my lungs, that sense of being mirrored, observed, dissected. I forced my voice steady. Why are you doing this? Another pause, then a breath exactly like mine. Not just a pattern, but the subtle quirks. Hesitant, shallow at first, deepening mid-cycle. The sound pressed against my eardrums, folded into my own body rhythm, and the hair on my arms prickled. It knew me better than I knew myself right now. I spun my chair slowly, scanning the office. Empty desks, flickering monitors, rain pounding the windows. Yet I could feel the pressure of someone behind me, patient, deliberate, watching every micro movement I made. The realization hit me, sharp and cold. This wasn't just a call. This wasn't just a voice. This was inside my night shift, inside my rhythm. Inside me, I tried dialing out, calling my supervisor. Every line went straight to voicemail. Every attempt rang, and then silence. And always the breathing. Always the subtle mimicry of my own pulse. I gritted my teeth, gripping the headset. I can't let you. A click, a whisper. You can't hide. The room's shadows shifted again, pulling deeper under the flickering fluorescence. My monitor screens reflected the usual empty streets. Yet I knew it wasn't out there. It was here, threaded into the static, the rain, the silence between clicks and beeps. I leaned forward, nearly pressing my forehead to the headset. Who are you? Another pause. The pattern of breaths changed. Slightly faster, slightly deeper. Every inhale synchronized with mine, but warped like a reflection in a broken mirror. Then a voice, soft, almost tender. I've been here all along. My pulse skipped. My hands shook, clutching the headset. I couldn't look away. Couldn't move. Couldn't think past the pounding rhythm inside my chest. Every breath I drew was mirrored, predicted, anticipated. And somehow, it felt like it was inside me. Somewhere I couldn't see, but could feel. I pressed my hands to my temples. Tried to shut my eyes. Tried to convince myself it was fatigue, sleep deprivation, a glitch, anything rational. But the rhythm, it stayed. Slow, steady, familiar, deliberate. My own breathing, distorted, pressed against the edges of my nerves. I whispered, "What do you want?" The line remained silent, but the breathing answered, sinking, inverting, mocking, intimate. And then a faint laugh, low, deliberate. Close enough I could feel its warmth brush against my neck. Not malicious, not cruel, patient, observant, waiting. I spun again, scanning the office. Empty desks, monitors, shadows. The rain fell harder, hammering against the window like it wanted to drown out the hum of the fluorescent lights. But the presence remained, stitched into every quiet moment between heartbeats, every pause in the line, every breath I drew. I tried to take a steadying breath. The echo followed. My own inhale mirrored. Then the exhale warped, deliberate. It was learning me. Or maybe it already knew. I pressed my forehead to the desk. My headset slid off slightly as I shook my head. I don't understand. I can't. Another whisper, closer this time. You'll understand soon. I froze. Not at the words. At the timing. They came just as I've been thinking them. Not on the line. Not in sound. Inside. Inside my own mind. The sense of being observed wasn't just around me. It was through me, threaded through every synapse, every inhale, every heartbeat. I sat back slowly, trying to force myself to focus on monitors. Empty streets, patrol cars, flickering lights. Nothing out of the ordinary. And yet I could feel it. They're pressing into my awareness, patient, deliberate, observing my every micro movement. Why me? I whispered, more to myself than to the headset. Another pause, then a breath, deep and slow, so familiar, so intimate. And then the whisper, soft, teasing, impossibly close. Because you listen, I shivered, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. The realization came, sharp and terrible. This presence didn't just want to be seen or heard. It wanted access, wanted connection, and it already had it. Into my rhythm, my pattern, my awareness. I shook, gripping the headset like a lifeline. I don't. Another pause, breath, synchronized, warped. And then, don't resist. You can't. The room felt smaller now. Shadows longer. Rain louder. And the presence closer. Patient, deliberate, familiar. I could feel it threading itself into the edges of my perception, into the quiet moments between beeps, between rain taps, between my own thoughts. I closed my eyes, trying to slow my pulse, slow the rhythm. But it followed. Every inhale mirrored, every exhale warped. I couldn't hide it. I couldn't shake it. Please. I whispered, voice cracking. Please, I don't. Another whisper, impossibly close. I know. I flinched. My own words, repeated back to me, distorted, observed. The realization struck like a hammer. It was inside me now, inside the shift, inside every beat of my chest. Patient, waiting, watching. I tried to tell myself it was just the night, the exhaustion, the endless quiet of dispatch. But the rhythm, the breathing, the presence, it wasn't leaving. Not yet. And maybe, I thought with a chill, it never would. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to focus on the monitors. Empty streets, rain, flickering lights, my own desk, safe, ordinary. And yet, I knew it was there, in the pauses, in the shadows, in the spaces between breaths. Watching, learning, patient. I whispered again, almost hoping for an answer I could understand. Who are you? The line clicked. Silent, just the soft hum of monitors and the rain outside. And then, a whisper that wasn't in the headset, but in the spaces between thoughts. I'm you. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe without hearing it echo. The presence, patient, deliberate, familiar, waited. And I realized with a cold, sinking certainty that this night's shift had ended long ago. What remained was something else. Something that already knew me, already had me, already watched. And as the rain fell harder, as shadows shifted in corners my eyes couldn't reach, I understood. I was no longer alone. Not in the office. Not in my own head. And whatever this was, it was just beginning. The headset buzzed, faint but sharp, cutting through the usual static. I adjusted it, thinking it was a usual glitch. But then I heard it. Another voice. Not the caller, not me, not anyone in the office. Someone else. Clear, precise, speaking like they'd been there all along. Patched through, don't let them see. I froze. My fingers hovered over the console. The office was empty except for me, the hum of monitors, and the rain tapping against the windows. I searched the logs, every line, every record. Nothing. No calls under that ID, no dispatch notes. Nothing. Did you hear me? The voice whispered again, calm, low. Too knowing. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was a line crossed somewhere. Another station, maybe someone testing the system. My hand hovered over the mic. Who is this? Silence. Then a soft, deliberate sigh. Follow the instructions. Don't ask questions. I leaned back, pulse jumping. The words weren't threatening. Not yet, but the tone, it was certain. Patient, deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. I glanced around the office. Empty desks, flickering lights, a wet coat left on a chair. Everything normal, everything wrong. I tried scanning the call logs again. Nothing, every record clean. Yet the voice was here, inside the headset, inside the quiet hum of the office. A presence threading through the routine of my shift, unnoticed until now. Why me? I whispered. The words sounded weak, small, swallowed by the space between the monitors and the rain outside. A pause, then a faint click of breath and the voice again. Because you listen, I shivered, not at the words, at the certainty behind them. Someone had been watching the feeds, listening, timing everything. I reached for my headset, gripping it like a lifeline. Listen, who is this? Nothing, only the softest of static. And then another line, quieter this time, a whisper almost lost under the usual hum. Not everything is in the log. Some things are meant to be unseen. I froze mid-breath. The hairs on my arms pricked. Not fear exactly. Not yet, but the awareness that something was there, hidden, deliberate, patient, watching. Someone or something, giving instructions that didn't appear anywhere else. Commands that didn't exist except in my head right now. I leaned forward, tried to focus. My own breathing felt loud in my ears. The office clock ticked on, but its rhythm fell off. The voice returned, softer, closer, threading through the silence. Do exactly as I say. Trust the sequence. Don't hesitate. I swallowed hard, fingers hovering over console keys. The monitors reflected the usual. Empty streets, parked cars, faint reflections of rain-slicked asphalt. Everything normal. Everything normal enough to make me doubt myself. I tried a test. I spoke into the headset. This is dispatch. Confirm your ID. I need a log entry. A pause, then a soft exhale, almost a laugh, dry and deliberate. I am not in the system. You won't see me. You're not supposed to. I froze again, not at the words, at the realization. They weren't asking to be heard. They weren't a prank. They were threading themselves through my shift, through the routines I thought I knew. They existed only where I could perceive them, only in the empty gaps of the night. My hand shook slightly as I tried to reset the console. A standard restart, routine troubleshooting. Lights flickered, monitors blinked, and then the voice again, softer this time, intimate, deliberate. Do not turn away. Follow the sequence. There's a pattern you must see. I gritted my teeth, pressing my palm against my forehead. The rain tapped harder against the window, louder in the quiet. I couldn't explain it. Every instinct screamed anomaly, yet every measure said routine. And in that tension, the voice threaded through, patient, waiting. I tried scanning the network, checking intercoms, calling other stations. Nothing. Everyone else asleep. Routine logs clean. Yet the instructions persisted. A step-by-step sequence, cryptic, deliberate, always just ahead of my comprehension. A map of actions invisible to any system, known only to me and the voice. I followed one. A simple directive. Check the east cameras. Nothing unusual, but the voice lingered. Good. Now observe the blind spots. Not everything can be captured on record. I froze mid-gesture. The words hit too close. Blind spots. The unrecorded spaces. Places I knew existed, but no one would ever see. And suddenly, I realized the voice wasn't just instructing, it was aware. Aware of what the cameras couldn't see. Aware of what I couldn't yet notice. I scanned again. The usual angles. Empty streets. Rain reflections. Nothing moving. And yet I felt it. Like a shadow in the periphery of my vision. Always there, just outside focus, patient, deliberate. Waiting. The instructions continued. Each step deliberate. Each pause timed perfectly with my own awareness. Notice the reflections. Pay attention to what isn't illuminated. Some things exist only in the shadow. I rubbed my eyes. Couldn't tell if fatigue was bending perception or if it was real. But the voice, it was tethered to reality in a way my own senses couldn't escape. It knew the sequence of my actions, my thoughts, my hesitations. And yet, it wasn't threatening. Not overtly, just present. I realized with slow, sinking certainty that every instruction was preparing me for something I couldn't yet see, couldn't yet comprehend. The thought churned in my stomach, tightening my chest. What had I been pulled into without realizing it? Another directive. Check the north feed. It said, ignore the logs. Focus on what isn't recorded. I followed, hesitant, aware of my pulse, aware of the subtle tremor of my fingers. Nothing out of the ordinary. Everything still routine. And yet, the unease coiled tighter. Something was being orchestrated. Something I couldn't yet name. The voice returned, softer now, threading through the static, through the quiet. You're ready. Almost. I froze, unsure whether to be relieved or terrified. Almost what? The word hung in the hum of monitors, a promise or warning. I couldn't tell which, and that uncertainty pressed into my ribs made each inhale a little heavier. I tried to speak. Ready for what? A pause. Long, deliberate, measured. The office lights flickered again, shadows stretching along the walls like ink and water. And then the whisper, to witness, to see what is hidden from everyone else. You were chosen because you notice, because you see. I felt my throat tighten. Chills ran down my spine. Chosen, witness. I wanted to resist, wanted to stand and leave, slam the door, forget the headset, forget the voice. But some part of me, terrified, curious, compulsive, listened, and every step, every action, pulled me deeper into the sequence, into the instructions. Another whisper, patient, intimate, threading through the air and through my awareness. Do not falter. Some things only exist in attention, only in observation. You must follow. I exhaled slowly, tried to steady my pulse, tried to convince myself it was a prank, a line crossed, an anomaly. But the rhythm of the voice, the certainty behind it, and the subtle pressure in the quiet corners of the office told me otherwise. I leaned back, staring at the monitors, feeling the rain pound harder against the glass, seeing the shadows stretch longer, imagining the blind spots that only the voice knew. And in that moment I realized I wasn't alone, not in the office, not in the night, not even in my own perception. The voice returned, one last directive before fading, soft but insistent. Observe, record, remember, and never forget what you cannot log. And then silence. I sat frozen, headset in hand, staring at empty streets, empty monitors, empty office. The rain fell harder. Shadows lingered. The sequence, the instructions, the voice, all lingering in the corners of my mind, waiting, patient, deliberate. And I understood, with a chill that settled deep in my bones, that this was only the beginning. I hadn't believed it at first. Thought maybe fatigue was bending reality, a trick of too many night shifts and too much caffeine. But then it happened again. A caller, or maybe the same unseen presence, repeated my own words before I even said them. I was running through the usual checklist, headset snug, monitors humming, rain streaking the office windows like fractured glass. I muttered under my breath, half to myself, half in habit. Check the north feed. The voice came immediately, soft, almost teasing, mimicking my tone perfectly. Check the north feed. I froze mid-breath, fingers stiff on the console. My own voice reflected back at me, but with intent, not just repeating, anticipating. It knew my next words, my next thoughts, and it was patient, deliberate, waiting for me to notice. A flush of panic warmed my cheeks. I leaned back, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Another night, another trick of exhaustion. But my pulse betrayed me. A staccato drum against the quiet hum of the office. Then it spoke again, before I could even think of the words. Are you tired? I jerked upright. My own voice had only just been on the tip of my tongue. Not a question I'd said out loud, just a fleeting thought. How could it know? The monitors showed empty streets, empty cars, reflections of rain and puddles. Ordinary, safe, except nothing felt ordinary anymore. I swallowed hard. Who's there? The voice didn't wait. It mirrored my fear, almost savoring it. Who's there? I slammed a hand on the desk, hoping to shock myself out of it. No luck. My heartbeat roared, filling every corner of the office. It was inescapable. The voice was everywhere, threaded through every hum of machines, the flicker of fluorescent lights, the rhythmic tap of rain against glass. I tried a test, a small, desperate trick. I whispered a random phrase, deliberately slow, measured. The blinds are drawn, the monitors glow, the clock ticks. Blinds drawn, monitors glow, clock ticks. It replied, almost immediately, almost perfectly. Every word, every hesitation, mirrored, not copied, mirrored, with intent. I leaned back, breathing shallow, tried to think logically. Was it a system glitch? A hidden intercom? Someone playing a sick joke? Nothing appeared on the logs. No IP addresses, no phantom connections, no calls. Nothing. The air itself seemed to thrum with the presence. Why are you doing this? I whispered, more to myself than to it. Why are you doing this? The voice laughed softly. Not cruel, not mocking, but deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. I had nowhere to go, no one to call. It wasn't in the system. It wasn't recorded anywhere. It existed solely for me. I ran a hand over my face, trying to steady the trembling. It was a mimic, a shadow that knew me intimately. Every word, every thought, reflected back in the precise moment I was about to speak it. The realization coiled in my stomach, tightening like a fist. It knew me, not just my voice. Me. I moved to the window, staring out into the rain-soaked streets. Shadows danced in the reflections of puddles and headlights. Ordinary, harmless shapes. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. Not by cameras, not by passers-by. Something else. Something patient. Waiting. Watching. Knowing. I whispered again, a small test, trembling. Are you real? Are you real? The words fell like stones. Heavy, deliberate. I gripped the sill, nails digging into wood. Real? I didn't know anymore. The voice was both nowhere and everywhere. A presence threaded through the silence. It had no body, no face, and yet it existed in every nuance of the room, every flicker of the lights, every hum of the monitors, every drip of rain down the glass. I tried to distract myself, checked the feeds, logged every camera angle, every street corner, every alleyway. Monitors blinked static-free, nothing out of place. And yet, with each glance, I felt it closer, not moving on the screens, moving in the space between screens, in the blind spots, in the edges of perception. Follow the sequence, it said suddenly. Do not hesitate. I nearly dropped the headset. The words weren't new. They weren't in the log. They weren't part of any procedure. But I'd heard them before in fragments, echoes threading through my shift, instructions repeated subtly, deliberately. And now they were urgent, pressing, insistent. I shook my head, trying to anchor myself. I don't know what sequence you mean. I know what you mean, it replied, precise, almost intimate. You're already following. My stomach nodded. Following what? Following whom? Every instinct screamed danger, yet the voice wasn't threatening. Not yet. It was directing, guiding, threading me through some pattern I could not yet comprehend. I glanced at the monitors again. Something felt off. Not what I saw, but what I didn't see. The empty streets, the parked cars, the glint of wet asphalt. All ordinary, all recorded. But what about the spaces between, the blind corners, the alleys just outside the camera's field of vision? Notice what isn't there, it said. Not everything exists on record. I shivered. My hand trembled as I adjusted the camera angles, checked every blind spot. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, and yet I felt it. The same certainty I'd felt before. The presence. Waiting. Watching. Knowing. I tried speaking again, a desperate plea this time. Why me? Why now? The voice repeated the question instantly. Why me? Why now? The echo burned in my mind. The perfect mimicry. The knowledge of my own thoughts before I even formed them. It wasn't just imitation, it was anticipation. It knew me better than I knew myself. Every hesitation, every fear, every flicker of doubt, it mirrored them back to me. I sank into my chair, gripping the armrests, trying to steady my mind. The monitors hummed. The lights flickered. Rain hammered the glass. And all around, threading through it, the voice waited, patient, deliberate, inevitable. It didn't speak for minutes. And in that silence, the weight of being mirrored pressed down. Every thought I had, every fear I felt, every uncertainty, I could hear it reflected back, not with my own inflection, but with precision, with awareness, with intent. A sudden idea struck me, faint, desperate. Maybe if I thought without speaking, without hinting, without moving, it wouldn't know. I tried it, focused on a word, a phrase, a thought so private I could barely hold it myself. The headset clicked softly, almost imperceptibly, and then, in the softest of static, I see. The certainty of those two words made my chest tighten. It had known, all along, even my secret thoughts, the ones I thought fleeting, inaccessible. Nothing escaped it, and the realization brought a cold, hollow fear, creeping like icy fingers down my spine. I tried to log it, tried to record every strange echo, every mirrored word. The system accepted it, filled the screens with data, but nothing, no trace, no origin, no identifier. It was invisible, untraceable, and I was alone, tethered to its awareness. Minutes passed, hours maybe, time blurred. The voice returned intermittently, repeating my own words, anticipating my questions, threading instructions I didn't fully understand. Every repetition tightened the tension, escalated the paranoia. I felt eyes in every reflection, in every shadow, in every flicker of the monitors. Finally, in a voice soft but deliberate, intimate yet alien, "You cannot escape what is mirrored. You must follow, observe, remember." I exhaled shallow, trembling. My mind raced, trying to anchor itself in reality. But I couldn't deny the pattern, the mimicry, the awareness, the invisible presence threading through my shift, through my actions, through my thoughts. I was no longer just a dispatcher. I was part of something else, something patient, deliberate, and inevitable. I looked at the monitors again. The streets were empty. The rain streaked down the glass. Shadows twisted in reflections. And I knew, with a certainty that made my chest tighten, that the presence would follow me, always, waiting, watching, mirroring, knowing. And somewhere in the quiet hum of monitors and rain, I realized the worst truth. It had already learned everything about me, and I had no idea what it wanted next. The screens went dark all at once. No warning, no flicker, no glitch, just silence where the hum of monitors used to be. I blinked, thinking maybe the main server tripped, maybe a circuit breaker somewhere. But the office light stayed on, humming faintly, casting shadows across the walls, stretching and trembling in the corners. Then I realized the phones, the radios, the network feeds. Everything was dead, except one line. A single, blinking handset at the far end of the desk. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. I should have felt relief. At least one line of communication survived. But when I lifted the receiver, the air in the room seemed to thicken, heavy and expectant. My voice, when I tried to speak, caught in my throat. "Hello," I said, hesitant. My own voice sounded wrong in the empty room, echoing faintly against the walls. A soft click, like a door opening somewhere deep inside the silence. And then a whisper, not distorted, not robotic, but alive, warm and deliberate, threading through the static. "I've been waiting." I froze. The words weren't just coming through the phone. They were in the room with me. I could feel them pressing against my skin, moving along the nape of my neck, crawling under my collar. I gripped the receiver tighter, knuckles white, but the whisper didn't stop. "I know you're here." I swallowed, shaking. The phrase wasn't a question. It wasn't casual. It was a certainty, deliberate and precise. And in that certainty, I felt it, the awareness, not the system, not a call, but a presence. Shadow patient, observing, waiting for the right moment to reach through. I tried to check the monitors, fingers flying over keys, but every screen remained black. Dead, dead, dead. No cameras, no logs, no alerts. Nothing. Only the line, only the whisper, only the awareness threading through every corner of the office. "Who is this?" I demanded, voice trembling despite my effort to steady it. A soft laugh, patient and low, drifted through the receiver. Not a laugh of joy, but a sound that made my stomach tighten. It belonged to no one, yet it belonged to everything I feared. "You know who I am?" The voice said, deliberate. "You've always known." I pressed the receiver in my ear, trying to locate the source. No shadows moved, no footsteps. Only the room, quiet, empty, but impossibly heavy. I tried to pull my mind away, rationalize. Maybe a hack, a glitch, someone exploiting the network. But there were no indicators, no traces, nothing, only the voice. I took a deep breath. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm here," it said softly, almost tenderly. "I just want you to see." "See what?" I asked, voice shaking. My eyes flicked to the darkened monitors, the desk, the office walls. Everything looked the same, but I felt it. Something shifting in the corners of perception, the edges of vision that shouldn't exist, but did. There was a movement behind my right shoulder, subtle, like a shadow folding into itself. I spun, heart hammering, but saw nothing. Only darkness, only the hum of the lights above, flickering faintly, casting strange angles across the walls. "You can't run from me," the voice whispered, slow, deliberate. "I'm in every corner you forget to see." I swallowed hard, shaking my head. The rational part of my mind screamed, "There's no one here. It's an empty office, empty streets, cameras offline." But another part, deeper, colder, the part that already felt watched, insisted, Something was here, waiting, watching, patient. I pressed the receiver closer. I can't see you. What do you want? You will, it said simply. No threat, no explanation. Just certainty. And in that certainty, a weight pressed against my chest, heavy and unyielding. I tried calling the backup lines, emergency channels, dead. Everything except this single curse line. My own hands seemed foreign, moving on their own, fumbling with the console, searching for something that no longer existed. Then the whisper returned, closer this time. Look at the screens. I looked. Nothing. Still nothing. But then, just for a moment, I saw movement. Not on the screens, not in the reflections of the glass, but in the edge of my vision, a shadow, tall, impossible, stretching across the floor as if it had no source. My pulse spiked. I turned my head sharply. Nothing, yet the weight of it remained. Watching, patient. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to focus. This is a call. This is a system error. Someone is playing a game. Something human. But even as I thought it, the voice murmured again. You know it's not human. You feel me already? I am the silence you can't ignore. I dropped the receiver for a second, shaking my head, pressing my palms to my face. Every rational explanation shredded. Fatigue? Exhaustion? Maybe, but it felt too precise, too intimate, too aware. It mirrored my fear, threading through every thought, every movement, every hesitation. I picked it back up, trembling. What do you want from me? To see, it said. To watch you see. I flinched, not at the words themselves, but at the certainty in them, like an observer behind a curtain. Pulling strings I couldn't see, orchestrating my panic, my terror. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a thought rose, a small, insidious doubt. What if it wasn't just observing? What if it was learning? Learning from me, learning how I reacted, how I feared, how I thought. And then what? You are ready, it whispered. The words were barely audible, but I felt them coil inside me like smoke. Do not look away. I tried to rationalize, try to ground myself. I reminded myself of procedures, protocols, routines. But every instinct screamed at me to flee, to leave the office, to disconnect everything, smash the phone, tear the building apart if necessary. But I couldn't move. The presence was a chain, invisible but unbreakable, threading through the room, threading through me. Observe. It said again, patient, deliberate. See what is not seen. The lights flickered again, slow and uneven. Shadows warped across the walls. The monitors, dead, reflected the room back at me in strange, fractured angles. And for a moment, just a fraction of a second, I saw something. Something there. Not solid, not defined. But it was real. The shadows shifted, elongated, receded. A presence in the corner of my perception that defied logic. I breathed shallow, gripping the desk. Every rational thought screamed at me. There's nothing there. Nothing exists outside your mind. But I felt it. A pulse. A weight. Something patient. Waiting. Watching. Knowing. I tried calling again. Emergency lines, backup numbers, anything. Dead. Static. Silence. Except a single line. The line that knew my voice, my thoughts, my fear. The line that belonged to something else. Something older. Something patient. Do you understand? It whispered, closer now, threading into my ear. I felt the words settle, intimate and invasive. You cannot leave. Not yet. You are part of the observation. I shivered, leaning back in my chair. My hands were numb, my breath shallow. Outside, the rain hammered the windows, indifferent, relentless. Inside, I was trapped with something that didn't exist in any system, any record, any logic. Only here, only now, only in this single blinking phone line. I realized then with a hollow dread that the presence didn't need a body, didn't need a form. It didn't need anything tangible. It needed only observation, patience, and awareness. And I was its audience, its mirror, its conduit. The whisper faded for a moment, and in that silence, I heard my own heartbeat, felt my own panic. And then, almost teasingly, it returned. You are ready, it said again. You will see soon enough. Do not close your eyes. I dropped the headset, shaking, trying to convince myself to leave, to run, to disconnect from everything. But the single blinking line called to me, threaded into my senses, impossible to ignore. My own fear, my own awareness tethered me. And I understood suddenly with a clarity that made my chest tighten. It wasn't going to stop. It wasn't going anywhere. It had already entered the silence of the office, threaded into the shadows of the monitors, woven into the static of deadlines. And it was patient, eternal in its own way, waiting for me to understand, waiting for me to see. I picked the receiver back up. I had no choice. It was the only line left, and I knew, with a hollow certainty, that answering it meant stepping further into something I could not yet comprehend. Something patient, deliberate, and impossibly aware. Outside, the rain continued to fall, indifferent to everything in the office. Inside, the shadow waited, and I realized with a chill that I would never be alone again. Not in this office, not on any line, not in any silence. I pressed the headset closer, listening, breath shaking, knowing with every heartbeat that this was only the beginning. The line clicked, soft and hesitant. Cutting to the hum of the dispatch office, I leaned forward, pen hovering over the pad, expecting a routine call, breakdowns, wrong turns, maybe a flat tire. But the voice on the other end made me pause. "Please, can you help me?" It was strained, low, distant, like the sound had been carried over miles of fog. I frowned at the caller ID, unregistered. Not unusual, but the tone made my stomach tighten. "Where are you?" I asked, steadying my voice. There was a pause, then the faint hiss of air, breathing, like someone was exhaling underwater. I don't know," the driver said finally. "The fog, it's everywhere. I can't see anything." I glanced out the office window. The city lights were dull tonight, the rain half frozen, half mist clinging to the glass. It was foggy here, yes, but not like he described, not like what I was imagining. "Can you describe where you are? Any landmarks?" I pressed. Another pause, longer this time, waited, and then, "The road, it shouldn't be here. There's a bridge, but it's not on the map. Trees, moving but wrong. Shapes, they shift." I blinked. Shapes shifting? My hand froze mid-pen. A driver calling about fog was one thing. A road that shouldn't exist was another, but I couldn't dismiss it outright. "Not yet. Stay on the line," I said. "Tell me the last thing you remember before the fog." The line went silent, just a faint static, whispering against the edges of the receiver. Then I saw lights, colors, but they weren't street lights. They hovered, low, and the truck, it doesn't respond right. It moves, but not the way it should. My throat tightened. I had field experience, yes, but this was outside the normal. Impossible roads, shifting trees, unregistered lights hovering in the fog. Something about the way he said it, like fear had seeped into the tone and fused with certainty. "Do you see anyone else?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "No, but I feel something else. Watching. It's just beyond the fog." His voice trembled, but he didn't sound like a typical nervous driver. This was different. Calculated fear, primal and sharp. I pulled up the nearest patrol cameras, tapping keys frantically. Only static. Nothing. The fog was real on camera, but not this thick, not this oppressive, not with shapes shifting like they had a mind of their own. Try to stay calm. Describe the truck. Any signs, anything you can hold on to. "It's ordinary," he said, breath hitching. "A semi-white, but the shadows cling to it, shapes pressing against the metal. I can feel them watching. They move when I do." "Focus on landmarks," I said, voice steady, though my hand shook. "Anything you can see. Poles, signs, anything familiar?" "Signs," he whispered, broken, rusted, letters peeling. "Words I can't read, but some look like my name. Or yours. Or ours." I froze. The monitor reflected my tense posture back at me. I swallowed hard, heart pounding. Names. Always names. Always personal. The fog out there wasn't random. It was deliberate targeting. Learning. Watching. Stay calm. I murmured, almost to myself, "Keep moving. Keep the truck straight." I think I see lights ahead," he said, "but they don't match the GPS. They hover low, slow, and when I blink, they're closer." My eyes darted to the office window, half expecting to see a shimmer of those hovering lights pressing through the fog. Of course, nothing was there, but the unease remained thick, almost tactile. I tapped keys frantically, scanning old maps, patrol logs, satellite overlays. Nothing matched. Roads closed for decades, overgrown paths, abandoned service stations. Yet the truck's position updated slowly, gliding along the highway in real time. "How fast are you moving?" I asked, voice tight. "Slow. It won't let me drive faster. The wheel resists heavy. Something's pushing back." The room seemed to shrink. My chest tightened. I gripped the receiver, knuckles white. I knew the stories. Drivers who vanish in bad weather. Emergencies that never explained themselves. But this was something else entirely. Something patient, shaping itself around the truck, around him, maybe around me. "Focus on a single point," I said. "A light, a tree, anything solid. Keep the wheel steady." "Solid," he exhaled sharply. "Nothing solid here. Only shadows. They fold into the fog. The lights, they mimic my headlights. Move when I move. I can't tell which is real." I leaned back, rubbing my temples. The hum from the lights above was louder now. Intrusive, almost physical. Static crackled in my ears. Soft, subtle, like whispering. And I realized it was the same pattern as the driver's words. Slight delay, but perfectly echoing. Almost intentional. "Don't panic," I said. "You're moving. You're still controlling the truck." The line went quiet. The faint hiss of breathing and tires on wet asphalt filled the void. I imagined the truck navigating that impossible highway. Fog thick as wool. Trees bending into unnatural angles. Something about the description set my nerves on edge. Not the danger of the road itself, but the precision of the threat. Every curve, every shadow was a line to observe, to react. I think I see an overpass," he said finally. "Old, crumbling, painted letters faded. I can barely make them out. They say," he swallowed, "welcome back." My stomach lurched. That phrase, impossible, personal, directed. My own name, our names. The way it landed through the line, through the hum. It wasn't random. It had knowledge, awareness. "Keep going," I said, voice steady, hiding the tremor I felt. "Slow, steady. You're almost there. Focus on light, anything solid." The GPS flickered. Coordinates wavering slightly. Not static, but a hesitation I could feel in my gut. The line went silent for a heartbeat longer than natural. Then the driver's voice, thin and shaky. "It's gone. I can't see the road. Only fog. Only shapes." I leaned forward, staring at the monitor, hands on the keyboard. Every system showed nothing. GPS offline, camera feeds dead, patrol logs unresponsive. The driver existed on the line alone, navigating a phantom highway that shouldn't exist. "What shapes?" I asked, voice low, careful. "Tall, stretching, leaning into the road. They move when I move. I blink, they're there. I look, they're closer. I can hear them, breathing, in sync with me, waiting." I swallowed hard. My pulse spiked. The office seemed colder, the fluorescent hum turning into something oppressive. I could almost feel the shapes pressing against the walls. Stretching, patient, knowing. "Keep moving," I said. "Steer straight. Focus on the headlights." They mimic everything. My words, my breathing, my heartbeat. I think they know me. I closed my eyes, gripping the receiver. It wasn't just fog or hallucinations. Something beyond understanding had intertwined with him, with the truck, maybe even with me through the call. The line throbbed with tension, alive, responsive, deliberate. "Almost there," I whispered, more to calm myself than him. The GPS focused on the next point. Any light, just one. Keep it steady. Another pause. Then his voice low, trembling. "I see a shadow, bigger than the truck, moving with me, following me. Not a person, not a machine. Something else. The office seemed impossibly still. My hand shook. I want to call for backup, for anyone, but the lines, the systems, the city grid, all dead. Nothing but static and that presence on the line. Don't engage it, I said. Ignore. Focus. The road, your hands on the wheel, the next light. Nothing else. I can't tell if it's ahead or behind, he whispered. I think it's everywhere. Watching. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my thoughts. Impossible roads, impossible presence. A driver stranded in a fog that bent reality. Every instinct told me to end the call, to disconnect. But something in the cadence of his fear demanded I stay. Watch. Guide. Survive. And then the faint glimmer, distant lights, blurred, flickering, impossible in geometry. The GPS stabilized, coordinates locked again. The truck moved forward, slowly. The driver's breathing eased, just slightly, as if hope had flickered into existence. Good, I said, voice steady and I felt. Keep going. Focus on the lights. You're on track, one step at a time. A long pause. Then, I see something solid. Maybe an old guardrail. A post. I can hold on to that. Relief bloomed briefly in my chest, tight and fast. But it was shallow. I knew the phantom highway had only offered a momentary reprieve. The shapes, the fog, the intelligence behind it would return, patient, waiting, observing, learning. Hold the line. I said, steer. Keep your eyes on it. Don't look at the shapes. Just the road. I think I can, he whispered. And then, static, soft, deliberate, almost satisfied. A quietness that was a relief, not truly. Only the pause before the next wave of impossibility. I pressed my hand to the console, staring at coordinates that led nowhere, lights that shouldn't exist, a road that had no name. And somewhere in that impossible intersection of fog, shapes, and light, the driver moved forward into the unknown, leaving me with a sense that this phantom highway had only begun to show its depth. The call came through just after midnight, low and urgent, the kind that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. At first, it sounded like any other distress signal, a truck stuck in fog, lost somewhere along an old route. But the details didn't add up. I tapped the microphone, voice steady, hiding the edge in my chest. Unit 54, can you confirm location? Static crackled back. Then his voice tight, strained. I'm on Highway 17, but the GPS. I froze. Highway 17 ended 20 miles back. Official records, satellite overlays, patrol logs. They all confirmed it. The road had been decommissioned years ago, abandoned, overgrown, swallowed by trees and weeds. I blinked, staring at the screen, half expecting the coordinates to correct themselves. They didn't. Describe what you see, I said, trying to keep calm. My fingers hovered over keys that suddenly felt useless. Fog. Thick, almost solid, shapes moving inside it. I can't tell if they're trees, people, animals, or something else. And the road, it curves in ways that shouldn't exist. I leaned back, the hum of fluorescent lights pressing into my temples. Something was wrong. Not just the fog, not just the GPS, the truck, the driver. Everything about this call refused to fit into reality. I cross-checked every recent report. Nothing. No truck matching that description. No route. No call. Not a single record. My pulse spiked. I scrolled again. Different databases. Old incident logs. Patrol reports. Even civilian complaints. Empty. Blank. Like the truck had never existed. And yet, the voice on the line was real. Clear. Human. Or at least convincingly human. Stay with me, I said, swallowing the sudden lump in my throat. What's around you? Any markers? Nothing I recognize. Only fog and lights. Sometimes they hover like they're alive. I blink and they're closer. I look again, farther. They follow me. The line went quiet. Not a pause. Something heavier. An emptiness that made me lean forward, heart hammering. The office felt smaller suddenly, tighter, as if the walls themselves were pressing in, listening. I imagine the truck navigating that impossible highway, tires crunching gravel that shouldn't be there, headlights cutting into fog that had a life of its own. The description clawed at my sense of reality. I wanted to disconnect, to call a hallucination, a prank, but something about the cadence of his breathing, the weight behind each word, demanded I stay. I think I see a building, he whispered. Maybe an old station. Lights dim, windows broken. I can't tell if anyone's inside or if I'm supposed to go in. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly, trying to ground myself. Every instinct told me to pull units, send help, but the truck didn't exist. The road didn't exist. And yet the line remained, unfaltering, waiting. Focus on the lights, I said. The headlights or the building, one thing at a time. You can handle that. A long pause. Then, it's wrong. Nothing is right here. The building, it's shifting. I look away for a second. It's different. I swear the walls lean. The doors move. And I can hear breathing. My stomach dropped. Breathing. Not just mine. Something else mirroring, matching, watching. I reached for the microphone, gripping it tight. The hum in the office seemed louder now, almost responsive, like it had a pulse. Keep moving, I said, though my own voice shook. Straight to the light. Ignore the rest. The driver hesitated. I think it's following me. It knows where I am. Or it knows me. I couldn't respond fast enough. My eyes darted to the console. Monitors remained blank. GPS froze again, flickering coordinates in impossible patterns. Systems offline. Only the phone line carried life. Only the line and the echoing presence in the fog. I can hear it. Behind me now, he whispered. Heavy, slow, waiting. I can't stop. If I stop, it'll... The line filled with static, low and insistent. Not random. Deliberate. Pulsing, like the fog itself had learned rhythm. Timing. Matching the cadence of his fear and mine. I rubbed my temples. This wasn't a call. It was a trap, an impossible highway, a phantom truck, a presence that bent reality and patience. I wanted to disconnect. I wanted to erase the line, the coordinates, the driver's voice. But I couldn't. Something held me, tethered me to this impossible event, as if my own survival depended on seeing it through. Focus on your hands, on the wheel, I said. You're breathing, one step at a time. Don't look at the shapes. I can't, he said, almost a whisper. They mimic everything. My words, my heartbeat, my thoughts. They know me. I swallowed hard. The words cut deep. It wasn't just the driver. It wasn't just the highway. Whatever existed out there, it learned. It adapted. It watched. And now, it had our names, our patterns, our fears. The coordinates blinked again, stabilizing, then twisting, then vanishing. The line trembled under my grip. I imagined the truck navigating curves that didn't exist, headlights cutting through fog alive with anticipation. Every instinct screamed to pull units, to warn the driver, to stop it before it escalated. But I knew it was pointless. The highway had no end. The truck had no record. And the shapes, they were patient. I realized then, with a sudden, icy clarity, that no one was coming. There was no intervention possible. The driver's voice broke again. I see a tunnel, or maybe a bridge, something solid. I think I can hold on to that. A spark of relief. Tiny, momentary. I pressed a hand to the console, trying to feel control, trying to feel hope, but deep down I knew it was false. The phantom highway, the shapes, the fog, they weren't bound by logic, by maps, by GPS. They were inevitable. Good. I said, voice almost normal. Focus. You can do this. One step, one turn. Static answered, low and deliberate, echoing like a heartbeat. Not his, not mine. Something else. Something waiting. Something satisfied with the delay, the patience, the observation. I think I see an exit, he said. Maybe I can... The line cut. I stared at the receiver. Numb. Not ringing, not static. Nothing. Dead. Silent. I checked the logs. The truck had never existed. Highway 17 was closed for decades. Every GPS trace, every record, every database entry. Empty, nothing. And yet, the voice had been there. The fear had been there. The fog, the shapes, the anticipation. They had been real. Or at least convincingly real. Enough to make me question every rule I'd ever trusted. I sank into the chair, the hum of the office pressing around me, thick, heavy, as if it had a consciousness of its own. Inevitability settled over me like cold water. Something about that highway, that phantom truck, that voice, it wasn't over. It couldn't be over. The phone line remained dead, but I could almost hear the static in my skull, faint, deliberate, waiting, learning, patient. I realized in what I had been avoiding, clinging to. The driver had never existed. The highway had never existed. And the shapes, the fog, the inevitable presence, they were still out there, waiting for the next call, the next observer, the next moment to fold reality around themselves. I exhaled slowly, hollowly. Relief had fled. What remained was a sense of inevitability. Doom. That tightening, cold certainty that no matter what I did, no matter how carefully I followed protocol, some events were unalterable. Some forces were beyond record, beyond maps, beyond intervention. And yet, the line, the presence, they had left a seed. A lingering thought that this wasn't just a phantom truck or a lost driver. This was a warning, an orientation, a test, something patient, intelligent, and inexorably tied to me now. I stared at the dead console, coordinates that led nowhere, maps that no longer mattered, and I felt the weight settle, like the world itself was folding in, coaxing me to understand that some roads are one way. Once you enter, once you witness, there is no return. The office lights flickered. Shadows leaned against corners where corners shouldn't exist. The hum turned low, deep, almost deliberate, and I understood fully that the phantom highway, the impossible truck, the inevitable shapes, they weren't just stories. They weren't just calls. They were a pattern, a presence, waiting for the next observer, waiting for me. I closed my eyes, pressing my hands to the desk, heartbeat loud in my ears. And somewhere deep in the void of reality, I felt the phantom road stretching endlessly, waiting, patient, inevitable. The first whisper came at 2:13 a.m., soft, almost tender, like a secret sliding to the receiver. I froze, hand hovering over the headset, convinced it was someone breathing on the other end. But the voice, oh, the voice wasn't breathing. It was speaking, quietly, clearly, and about things that hadn't happened yet. I think she's gonna fall, it said. I jerked upright. My mind raced. There was no call active yet. The line was supposed to be silent. I double-checked the screen. Idle. No incoming calls. Nothing. But the words lingered, sticky and wrong in the air. Then a ping. Incoming call. Number withheld. I hesitated, heart thumping in that cold, slow rhythm that signals trouble. Unit 32. This is dispatcher. I said, voice steady though my stomach nodded. Silence. Then, she's going to fall. Exactly the same words. My fingers tightened around the microphone. Who is this? I asked. No answer. Only a soft exhale, like a breeze brushing over a window pane. The unease sank into my chest. I glanced at the call logs. Nothing recent. Nothing matching that number. It was like the voice existed outside the system, appearing just long enough to speak, then vanish. I tried to shake it off. Maybe fatigue. Maybe the hum of fluorescent lights had finally warped my perception. I'd been on graveyard shift for weeks. Dreams, whispering half-formed words, were nothing new. But this was different. Precise. Predictive. Another call. Same number. Same silence before the whisper. He will scream first. I leaned back, gripping the edge of the desk. My pulse spiked. This wasn't random. These weren't hallucinations. The voice was anticipating, predicting, or, worse, narrating. I imagined someone lying asleep somewhere. Words tumbling from lips before the actions themselves had begun. I called it in, my voice shaky. Control. I'm logging unusual call activity. Number unknown. Pattern is predictive. I repeat predictive speech. Static on the line. Not the usual crackle, but a low, almost deliberate hum, like a reminder that whatever was happening, it was aware, watching, responding. The third call came 20 minutes later. The whisper had changed. The door will open. And then what? I pressed the microphone, but no answer. Only that gentle, wrong calm. I scribbled notes. Door opening predictive, voice unknown. But the words felt useless, like writing down a shadow. I imagined the scene. Somewhere, someone asleep, a door opening in their dream. And my voice, somewhere else, colliding with their future. The impossibility knotted my stomach. I had no way to verify, no unit nearby, no caller to speak to, just a voice, just a prediction, just a creeping suspicion that reality had tilted sideways. Hours passed, calls coming at uneven intervals. Each whispered event came before it could happen. Footsteps across the floor, a phone ringing, a window rattling. I tried to track them, tried to compare notes with patrol units, but there were no matches. Each whisper was a ghost event, vanishing before verification. Sleep deprived, I caught myself staring at the headset for minutes at a time, waiting, expecting the next words. Each time it came, and each time it confirmed my deepest unease. Someone, something, knew what was about to happen. Not just knew, announced it, as if reality itself had a voice, and I was the only one listening. I called the number back once. Nothing. Deadline. Just a faint static, humming low, almost patient. I hung up, feeling that pulse of inevitability. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't technical. It was beyond my understanding. By 5 a.m., my office smelled of coffee and tension. The whispers hadn't stopped. The events hadn't ceased. And yet, the predictions were always precise. I began to notice patterns, small, almost imperceptible details. The whispered events were always trivial at first. Doors, footsteps, objects moving slightly. But they were escalating, more personal, closer to me. At 5:23, the whisper said, "You will feel it first behind your right ear." I froze. Sweat prickled my skin. I slowly reached up, half expecting a phantom touch. Nothing, only the lingering whisper in my skull. And then, just as predicted, a shiver crawled down my neck. Not a memory, not a thought, but a sensation, like the voice had touched me through the line, through reality. I staggered back in my chair, heartbeat racing. I couldn't tell if the fear was from exhaustion or from something else entirely. Something impossible asserting itself. My office felt smaller suddenly. Walls leaning inward, fluorescent lights flickering with awareness. Calls kept coming. Predictive, precise, personal. The whisper knew the rhythm of my breathing, the pattern of my hands across the console, even a faint twitch in my left eyelid. It narrated before observation, anticipated, mocked me with its certainty. By mid-shift, I could no longer track it logically. Every call, every whisper, was a thread leading into a web I couldn't see the end of. I tried telling myself it was a clever hacker, an AI experiment, or some sick prank. But no technology one knew could predict events that hadn't happened yet. Not with this clarity. Not with this intimacy. At 6:17, the whisper said, "You will drop the pen 3 times. Now." I glanced down. The pen trembled in my fingers. I let it fall once, twice, 3 times. My hand went numb, but the whisper continued, calm, patient, lingering like smoke in a room. "You're noticing," it said. I froze, not aloud, not consciously, but I felt the words resonate in my chest. Not just a whisper, but the presence behind it, the force anticipating observation itself. I was no longer merely listening. I was being observed, mapped, measured. I tried to end the calls, tried to trace the number, tried to shield myself. Every method failed. Every attempt met static, gentle, insistent, like a heartbeat in the darkness. The whisper persisted, and it grew bolder. Personal details now. My coffee mug on the left, my chair leaning slightly backward, the threadbare spot on the carpet beneath my feet. By 7 a.m., exhaustion had erased reason. The whispers weren't just predicting, they were interacting. And I realized, in the hollow calm that comes when terror and disbelief merge, that they were learning, adapting, responding to my reactions. Almost conversational now. Not random, not chaotic, deliberate. The last call before shift change came at 7:43. I remember it clearly. The voice, now familiar, gentle in cadence, said, "You will leave, but you will hear me again. Tomorrow, maybe, or never. I will wait." And then silence. I sat in my office, trembling, staring at the headset as if it could offer answers. I realized that my perception of time had stretched and folded. Hours had passed, yet minutes had flown. Reality had become a thin veil, pierced by a voice that knew before seeing, predicting before observing. I tried rational thought. Exhaustion, hallucination, technical glitch. None fit. None explained the precision, the intimacy, the sense of inevitable awareness. The voice was not random, not malevolent, yet not benevolent. Something outside reason, outside patterns. Waiting, watching, whispering events before they occurred. I left the office at 8:05 a.m., but the sensation lingered. Not a voice in my ear, not even in my mind, but a pull, a presence, anticipation. I could feel it in every step down the empty corridor, in every shadow stretching across the concrete floor. It wasn't just predictions, it was expectation. I tried to tell myself I'd sleep, I'd dream, I'd forget, but the memory of the whispers, the impossible precision, the subtle touch of inevitability stayed, lingered, and I knew without doubt that tomorrow or the next night, the line would ring again, the whisper would return, and reality would once more tilt in ways I couldn't anticipate. I felt a chill, not from the office, not from the night, but from knowing that somewhere, someone or something was awake and speaking events before they were even thought, and that I had heard them first. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat at my console, staring at the blank monitors, listening for the faint hum of incoming calls and waiting for the whisper to arrive again. But this time, it wasn't just voices from somewhere else. It was me. It started subtly, with a sound so faint I almost missed it. My own voice, soft and tired, murmuring words I hadn't yet spoken. I leaned closer to the headset, expecting some trick of acoustics or delayed playback from the intercom. But there was nothing on the system, no record, just my own words, repeating before I could form them. Then the call came, same unknown number. I picked up with a trembling hand. "Unit 32, go ahead," I said, and the line answered me, not with another voice, with my own. "I can't wake up," it whispered. I froze. The words were mine, or at least sounded exactly like mine. I couldn't tell if I had spoken them, or if someone or something had. A chill swept through my spine. My reflection in the darkened monitor looked wrong, like a half-remembered dream I couldn't shake. The whisper continued, filling the silence of the office with intimate confessions I hadn't even dared think. "The hallway stretches forever. I can't find the door." My stomach dropped. I hadn't dreamed that exact scene. Not until now. Or maybe I had. And now it was echoing through reality, or maybe reality was bleeding into the dream. I pressed the microphone, but my voice felt foreign, as if it were lagging behind me, trapped somewhere between thought and sound. The monitors flickered. For a moment, the office seemed to expand, walls stretching outward, stretching into shapes I had seen in my dreams. Endless corridors, pale and echoing. My chair squeaked against the floor, unnaturally loud, and I realized I was holding my breath. The whisper of my voice carried across the line again. "You are here, and I am there." The pronouns twisted inside me. I didn't know where here was, or there. The office, the monitors, my console, they all seemed unreal. I caught movement in the corner of my vision, shadowy, fleeting, like someone or something was walking just beyond my sight. A second call came immediately after, same number. I tried to ignore it, tried to remind myself it was just another hallucination, another fragment of exhaustion. But the voice was different now. Clearer, closer. My own words again. "I see it, the window, but it's moving." I gasped, involuntarily, and the microphone picked up the sound. Not that it mattered. The voice was already ahead, narrating my reaction, predicting my fear, describing sensations I hadn't yet experienced. My pulse raced. Reality was no longer mine. My own consciousness had become the script for someone or something else. I pushed the chair back, legs scraping against the linoleum. Shadows clung to the edges of the room, dark shapes that shouldn't exist in an office lit by flickering fluorescent lights. And then the whisper said, "You are afraid, but you do not leave." I swallowed hard. I couldn't tell if it was describing me or commanding me. Every instinct screamed to hang up, to step outside, to escape the thin grip of the office and its shifting dimensions. But my hands were frozen, hovering over the console, trapped by curiosity and fear intertwined. The third call overlapped with the first two, voices layering like threads in a web. My own words repeated in distorted echoes. I recognized phrases I thought to myself in dreams. Dreams that felt recent and distant at once. They described rooms I had never entered, hallways that twisted like ribbons, a sense of being followed by shapes I couldn't define. You will turn, and the shadow follows. Now! I spun in my chair, expecting someone, something, but there was nothing. The monitors remained blank, the office empty. Yet the whisper persisted, guiding, predicting, narrating. It was teaching me that my thoughts were no longer private. My imagination had become the conduit, the script for a presence that existed just beyond perception. I sank back into the chair, trying to calm myself. My reflection in the darkened screen seemed to shiver. I blinked, and the shivering shadow multiplied, moving with intent, like it was watching the space where I had been moments before. The whisper chuckled, or at least it sounded like it, a low vibration in my chest. You cannot tell the difference. Now you see, now you hear, and you are caught between. Caught between, the phrase repeated in my head, echoing the pull between dream and reality. I tried to jot it down, but the pen jumped and twisted as if resisting, leaving marks that were almost words, almost shapes. Shapes I recognized from nightmares I hadn't had yet. The whisper confirmed them all. The ink knows. The pen moves. The paper waits. I couldn't move. Not from fear. Not from disbelief. I could only watch as my own subconscious unfolded through the calls. Events I hadn't lived. Rooms I hadn't entered. Sensations I hadn't felt. All narrated by my own voice, anticipating each thought. Hours slipped by unnoticed. My coffee had grown cold. My stomach churned. My eyes hurt from staring at the monitors, trying to find meaning in the shapes of shadows and the cadence of my own words. Every sound, every flicker, every whispered phrase made my reality unstable, like walking across ice that shifted underfoot. At one point, I realized I hadn't blinked for minutes. The whisper didn't stop. It spoke of footsteps behind me, a breath on my neck, of hands I couldn't see. And I felt it all, faintly, impossibly, like a dream bleeding into wakefulness. You think it is only words, but it is sensation, and you cannot leave sensation behind. My pulse hammered in my temples. I tried to speak, to argue, to reclaim my reality, but every syllable came out predicted, narrated before it was even formed. The whisper was inside me now, echoing my thoughts, my doubts, my fears. I was both speaker and listener, both subject and observer. By dawn, I was no longer certain where the office ended and the whisper began. The lines of reality had blurred, fractured by repeated calls, repeated anticipations, repeated reflections of my own mind. And yet I could not leave. Some part of me wanted to scream too, but the whisper anchored me, teasing, guiding, teaching. The last call before shift change was different. The voice was calm, patient, almost intimate. You will sit, you will listen, and when the lights go down, you will dream. And I will speak again, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps the day after, perhaps only in the memory of what was. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to run. But I stayed. I sat. I listened. And when the office lights dimmed for morning, when the world outside yawned into day, I knew I would carry the whisper with me, not as a voice, not as a call, but as a presence, a shadow in the corner of my mind, waiting, narrating, predicting, crossing the line between sleep and wake, between reality and nightmare. I felt it there as I walked home, a soft pulse of inevitability, a gentle tug against a fragile boundary of what I thought I knew. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me more than fear ever could, that it was only beginning. The whispers were not limited to the console, not limited to the calls. They would find me wherever I went. They had already begun. By the time I reached my apartment, I could hear the faintest echoes of my own voice, repeating words that I had not yet spoken, describing movements I had not yet made. The line between me and the whisper had dissolved. I had crossed it, and I didn't know if I could ever return. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my own thoughts reflected back at me in half-formed phrases, half predictions, half future. Sleep would not come, not while the presence lingered. And I understood, somewhere deep in my chest, that tomorrow the calls would begin again. My own voice would lead me, narrate me, trap me. Reality was no longer mine to trust. And somewhere in that impossibly thin boundary between dreams and wakefulness, I realized I had learned a new kind of fear. The fear of oneself reflected, anticipatory, and unstoppable. I arrived late, later than usual, but not for the first time. The office smelled of old coffee and paper, but something else lingered, a faint, hollow silence, like the building had exhaled and forgotten to breathe again. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, flickering in a rhythm that didn't match the hum of the air conditioning. I paused at the door, keys in hand, and felt the sudden weight of emptiness pressing against me. The desks were all in place, chairs tucked in as though everyone had vanished mid-task. No ringing phones, no shuffling papers, no chatter, nothing. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud as I crossed the room to my console. Normally, the hum of machines and low murmur of colleagues gave the office a heartbeat. Tonight, it was dead. I checked the monitors. They flickered, but no activity registered. No calls in the queue, no messages, nothing but the pale green light of idle systems. I tapped the headset. Silence. I thought about calling someone, anyone, to check if I was the only one here. But I didn't. Part of me dreaded hearing another human voice that might not belong. Or worse, realizing I might already be too late to be alone. The clock on the wall ticked, but the sound was heavy, deliberate. Every second dragged. I felt my pulse accelerate. It's strange, the way silence can be loud, how it presses against your ears and skin until you start imagining it moving, bending, reshaping itself into shapes you can't see. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the blank monitors, tried to convince myself it was just a quiet night. Maybe everyone had left early. Maybe it was just a lull before the late calls started. But the air felt different, denser somehow. There was no usual office smell, no perfume, no faint microwave smoke. Just nothing. A light flickered at the end of the hallway. Quick, brief, like a reflection, a shadow. I froze. No one was supposed to be here. I held my breath, straining to hear something. Anything. But the office remained still. My fingers gripped the edge of the desk, and I realized my nails had left grooves in the plastic. I tried to shake off the feeling, told myself it was just nerves. Then the intercom clicked, not the usual static hum before a call, just a soft, deliberate click. My heart skipped. I picked up the handset slowly, careful not to jerk it. Nothing. Silence. I set it down, telling myself I had imagined it, that the echo of my own tension was playing tricks on me. I walked the perimeter of the office. Doors were locked, but I checked anyway. Cabinets closed, break room empty. Every corner I turned, every shadow I passed, my chest tightened. The air was too still. The office should have breathed with life, even at night. But tonight, it felt paused, suspended, like I'd stepped into a photograph that hadn't been developed. Returning to my console, I noticed the smallest things had changed. Papers I hadn't touched were stacked differently. A pen lay on its side where it should have been upright. I paused, blinking, trying to convince myself I'd misremembered. But the feeling didn't pass. It grew, a weight in the air in my chest. I felt watched, though I couldn't see anyone. I sat down again, headset in hand. The monitors blinked at me, empty green eyes. And that's when I heard it. The softest scrape, A chair moving somewhere across the office. Slow, deliberate. I stiffened, heart hammering, and called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" Silence. Only the scrape repeated. Closer this time. My voice trembled, small and weak. I said, "Hello?" No answer. Just a chair sliding. Scraping against the floor like fingernails across a chalkboard. I could hear the soft vibrations through the tile, through the soles of my shoes. I told myself it was the night janitor, that someone had forgotten to lock the supply closet. Rationalizations tumbled out of me, but they sounded hollow even as I said them. I reached for the intercom again. Click. Nothing, but now the lights flickered differently, in pulses I hadn't noticed before. Shadows stretched longer than they should. My reflection in the darkened monitor flickered with them, like it didn't quite match me, like it hesitated before moving. A breeze whispered through the office. Cold, not from the AC. It moved papers, nudged a stack of folders toward the edge of the desk. I leaned in, trying to catch something tangible, but there was nothing. No open window, no vent, just the weight of the empty room pressing against my skin. I sat back, trying to calm down, tried to convince myself of facts, of reason, but my own thoughts sounded strange. I was hyper-aware of everything. Every tick, every hum, every whisper of the fluorescent lights. Every shadow looked like it might detach and come closer. And the scrape of the chair, sometimes it fell behind me, sometimes across the room, always just out of clear sight. Then came the faintest whisper, almost inaudible, not from the phone, not from the intercom, just in the room, close to my ear. I whipped my head around. Nothing. I caught my reflection in the monitor again, and for a heartbeat, I thought it smiled. Just a twitch at the corner of the mouth. I blinked. Gone. My hand shook. I gripped the desk. I wanted to leave, to run, but I couldn't. The office felt infinite now. Walls stretching a little further every time I turned. Ceilings a little higher. Shadows a little darker. I realized I couldn't trust my eyes. Not the lights. Not the reflections. Not the space itself. Something about it had changed while I wasn't looking. The phones rang suddenly. All of them. Not a usual call, not a known line. Just ringing, one by one, in a rhythm that didn't make sense. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the nearest receiver. When I lifted it, silence greeted me. The ringing continued in other corners, then stopped abruptly. My pulse thudded so loudly I could hear in my ears. Then the whisper again. Closer this time. Clearer. "You're alone." My stomach turned. I swallowed hard. I know, I whispered back, but the voice that returned wasn't mine. Low, soft, deliberate, familiar enough to make my skin crawl. Alone, yes, but not empty. I froze. The words weren't coming from any speaker, any system, just around me, in the space, in the air, in my own head. I stood up. The floorboards groaned under my weight. Shadows flickered across the walls, almost human, almost alive. I tried to rationalize, reflection, fatigue, imagination, but the scrape of that chair again, deliberate and slow, cut through my reasoning. My office phone rang. I didn't touch it. Another whisper. "Why do you wait?" I glanced at the door. Hallway empty. Windows dark. The office, my office, now a cage. My reflection caught in the monitor again. And I realized, not for the first time, that it wasn't my reflection. It moved slightly out of sync, delayed, like it knew what I would do before I did. I stumbled back to the chair, heart racing, sweat prickling my skin, headset in hand. My voice shook when I called out, "Who's there?" No answer, only the whisper, low and amused. "We've been here, always." I wanted to leave, run into the night, scream until someone heard me, but my body refused. My mind refused. The office had claimed me in its stillness. The shadows, the flickers, the whispers, they were patient, waiting. I realized I had been alone all along, and yet I had never been alone. Hours passed. Time became meaningless. The monitors blinked. The phones rang. The whispers moved closer, guiding, watching, teaching. I sat at the console, unable to leave, unable to move. The office had become a living thing, breathing with empty air, stretching with shadows, speaking with voices that were mine and yet not. By the end of the night, I was exhausted, trembling, drenched in cold sweat. The office lights flickered once more, then steadied. Silence returned, heavy and complete, but the feeling remained. The pressure of eyes, the pull of unseen presence, the certainty that leaving was no longer possible. When morning came, I stepped outside. Sunlight, streets, life, and yet the office followed me in memory, in weight, in whispers still echoing at the edges of thought. Something had changed. I was not the same. And I knew, somewhere deep in my chest, that the next shift would not be like any before, that the empty office was not empty, and never had been, that it had waited for me, and it would wait again. The rain started softly, almost polite, tapping against the windows in irregular rhythms. I didn't need to look outside to know it had begun. I could feel in the air the way it changed the weight of the office, pressed against my skin like a memory I didn't want to remember. It was still the same room, same monitors, same empty chairs, but something had shifted. Something had been waiting for the rain. The headset buzzed, faint at first, like static trying to form words. Then it came, a call, not new, not from outside, from the past. I froze, hand on the receiver. I recognized the voice, every voice, but it spoke backwards, words twisting into sound that my mind tried desperately to untangle. Each call I had answered, each emergency I had logged, now looping in reverse. I heard the truck driver's fear, the whispering dream calls, the lonely screams from distant highways. All of them turned backward, like the world itself had pulled a thread and the fabric of time was unweaving. The more I listened, the harder it was to remember which calls were real and which had never truly existed. The office grew darker, the rain louder, echoing in my head. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the sound didn't stop. It was in the walls, in the chairs, under the desks. The wet pulse of rain pressed against my consciousness, and I realized with sinking weight that it wasn't just sound. It was memory, folded and twisted into a rhythm that demanded attention. I could feel each call as if it had brushed my skin, left a residue of dread, of helplessness, of lives that had slipped past me, unnoticed. The lights flickered. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw shapes in the office. Figures sitting where desks had been empty, shadows that moved independently of the light. I blinked. Gone. Just my imagination. Or was it? The rain outside hit harder now, a steady hammer against the windows, and the sound of it seemed to carry voices along with it. Whispers I recognized, crying, pleading, laughing even, calls I had handled, calls I had failed. I leaned back in my chair. The monitors flickered. Every line of text I had typed, every log I had made, scrolled in reverse. Names appeared backwards, locations reversed, time spun backward on their clocks. It was as if the office itself was undoing the hours, erasing everything I had touched, every moment I had tried to control. My pulse quickened. I wanted to stand to escape, but my legs refused. It wasn't physical. It was as if the rain had a gravity of its own, holding me here, making me watch, making me listen. The past wasn't past anymore. It was present, alive, replaying, reshaping. Each reverse call brought a new weight, a new ache, a new realization that I've been only a witness, never in control. And then the whispering started. Not just voices from calls, not just the echoes of emergencies. Real whispers brushing against my mind. Names I didn't know, voices I couldn't place, but their tones were familiar, sad, urgent, expectant. I shivered. My reflection in the darkened monitor twitched, not in sync with me. A folder on my desk slid open. I hadn't touched it. Inside, paper scrawled in handwriting I didn't recognize, words I couldn't read. But somehow I understood them. They were notes, logs, confessions. Memories not my own, but mine, woven into some fabric I couldn't see. I reached toward them, fingers trembling, but they fell apart, dissolving into wet ash before I could touch them. The rain outside swelled. I could feel it through the floor, through the walls, through my own bones. Every drop seemed to carry fragments of voices, fragments of calls, fragments of lives I had been part of but never truly seen. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. My voice was lost in the reverse echoes, trapped in the water and the air and the twisting time of the office. And then I understood. It wasn't just the calls that were reversing. It was me, my memories of each night, each shift, each person I tried to help. They were all folding backward, unmade, leaving me hollow, leaving me watching a life I couldn't grasp. I pressed my hands to my face. The monitors blinked one final time, a pale green glow that felt like eyes staring at me. The whispers grew louder, each one sharper, more urgent. Some were pleading, some were laughing, some just repeated my own name in tones I didn't recognize. And all of it carried an ache, a weight, the sense that the rain had become a tide, and I was caught in it. Every call I had ever answered, every moment of duty, now carried a loss I couldn't name, a closure I couldn't reach. I staggered to the windows. Rain streaked glass, blurring the world outside into smudges of gray and silver. For a moment, I thought I saw people moving outside, but then they dissolved into water, into the storm itself. Everything was fluid. Everything was gone. I realized that the office, the calls, even I, were all just echoes now, fragments being rewritten in reverse, leaving only the hollow impression of what had been. I tried to pick up the headset, to answer calls, to speak, but it was useless. The sound was everywhere and nowhere, pulling at the edges of thought, pressing into memory until I felt as if I was dissolving into it. Names, addresses, numbers, voices, they all overlapped, tangled, reversed. I could not distinguish past from present, real from imagined, alive from dead. Then came the heaviest echo of all, my own voice, repeating backwards, words I had never spoken, calls I had never answered, fears I had never admitted. I stumbled, chest heaving, and realized the office was not an office anymore. It was a vessel for all the lost calls, all the reverse time, all the moments that had never reached closure. And I was its witness, trapped in the endless playback. The rain slowed. The sound receded to a gentle tapping, but the echoes remained. Each reverse call lingered like a fingerprint on my mind, impossible to wash away. I could feel the weight of every unanswered question, every life I had touched and then lost. The office, empty and dark, was no longer just a room. It was memory itself, and it would not let me leave. I sank into my chair, shaking. The monitors dimmed, one by one. Only the faintest glow remained, flickering like a heartbeat I could no longer hear. The whispers faded, but the sense of presence remained, hovering, patient, inevitable. I realized that even silence was loud here, that absence had a texture, and that the office had become a place outside of time, outside of rescue. The rain finally stopped. The world outside returned, washed clean and quiet. But I was not the same. Every step, every breath, every glance carried the weight of reverse calls and fractured time. I could remember, yes, but only in pieces, fragments that did not fit together. The office had marked me, taught me, left me with a sense of loss so complete it hurt to breathe. I stood slowly, trying to shake off the remnants, trying to convince myself I could go back to life, to normalcy. But even as I walked out, even as I closed the door behind me, I knew I would hear the reverse calls again. I would feel the rain against the windows, feel the weight of the empty office, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I would realize that nothing had truly ended. Not the calls, not the echoes, not the haunting presence that had settled into my chest. Time itself seemed different now. Even in daylight, even among people, I could hear fragments of the past, backwards words that didn't belong to me, repeated softly under my breath. Every sound, every sigh, every distant shout carried a memory of those nights, the unreality of the reverse calls, the hollowness of moments undone. And I knew, as I finally sat alone in my apartment, the windows dark and dry, that the office was waiting with the rain that would return, with the calls that would reverse, with a presence that would brush my mind again. I was no longer merely a dispatcher. I was a witness to the unraveling of time, a keeper of echoes, and the rain would always remind me of it. Somewhere deep in that quiet, a final whisper lingered, clear this time, familiar, yet not. It said my name. I turned. Nothing. But I felt it, and I understood. Closure had come in the form of loss. Everything played backward now, and there was no way to stop it, only to endure it, only to remember in reverse. The office, the calls, the rain, they were not finished with me, and neither was the darkness that had learned to speak through the silence, through the echoes, through the weight of all the reverse moments I had ever touched. And so I wait, listening, remembering, feeling every reverse sound, every lost call, every whisper that has ever found me. And the rain, oh, the rain will return, and with it, all that I had tried to leave behind, playing backward once more.